moving away from the sprinters' capital of Tours. We leave the Loire Valley behind us and continue in a southeasterly direction. There's a King of the Mountains point out on the course at the Côte de Croix, and then just after the feeding station, there is an intermediate sprint point in Saint-Astrudel. But then it's a charge into town, and a rather tricky charge into town for the sprinters, into Saint-Amand-Montrond. And again, like yesterday, it's a perfect day for the sprinters. It's almost pan flat. There's a little bit of a ripple at the end, but I don't think that will upset anybody. And look at the profile. Never very much higher than 550 feet above sea level.
Yes, well, with some 21 miles into the stage, there is a breakaway, but they're not allowing this breakaway to actually get very far ahead today. That's for sure. Back to you, Todd.
We will.
Yes, welcome to live action now as we pick up stage 13, 107 miles as we go from Tours to Saint-Amand-Montrond. Let's get straight in with Farmer's Cocoa Butter Formula for Men weather report. It's a beautiful day, hitting 77 degrees Fahrenheit. There are light winds, but they'll be on the face of the riders today, and sunny all day. It really is a magnificent warm day, Paul.
Ideal racing conditions, I would have to say. Ideal day again for the sprinters, and it's no surprise to see an early breakaway getting clear of 6 riders. At the moment, they've just reached their maximum advantage of 3 minutes and 20 seconds. But Phil, today, the main field are not giving them a large advantage.
No, this is as it happens every day on these flat stages. It established itself 2 kilometres into the day. There's all the names for you. Johan Gen of Europcar, Ruben Perez, Euskaltel, Louis Matev Cofidis, Niemic of Lamprey, Chris Bockmans of Vacansoleil, and Cyril Lemoine of the Sojourn. That's the breakaway, the break at its highest so far. Now, let's start by going inside the race, TireRack.com, and catch up with Steve Perino. Good day, Steve.
Good day, Phil. It's been interesting to listen to everyone's tactics and what they're going to do with the sprint finish here. Interesting note from Orca Green Edge. Robbie McEwen went out on his own bike with a GoPro, sent all that tape back to their bus. Now, every team is doing that, and they're setting a set of eyes up the road. Some people in the team bus are using Google mapping. There is no end of the technology being used to prepare for these sprint finishes. And they're also trying to keep an eye out for the wind. And what is ironic is that, you know, you got so many people that know exactly what the wind is doing that everyone is trying to get to the same spot. I talked to Greg Henderson of Lotto Belisol, who went down yesterday. And in fact, he said he knew exactly where the wind was coming from. But by the time they were going for position, it was too late, and they crashed out. He said the problem with that is that everyone is trying to get the same spot. So when it comes to wind, it's a little bit like yelling fire in a theater. Everyone's trying to get there.
Yes, it is. And we have a little bit of a tricky approach to the line today. Robin McEwen, 12 times a stage winner in the Tour de France. He now works as a consultant for the Australian Orica Green Edge team. And every day he comes up to the finishing line, traces the last couple of kilometres and sends that film back to the start. And he doesn't like particularly the finish, I don't think, today, Paul.
No, he asked a question as to why within the last kilometre there's a little chicane. It's around about 750 metres to go. The riders take a very sharp left-hand turn, followed by a right-hander and then a left-hander again, and he thinks that corner there is a recipe for disaster. The profile's nothing really to be scared about this afternoon. Very, very flat, undulating roads as we leave the Loire Valley behind us, and I have to say it will be a day for the sprinters, because that little lump at the end, you can see on the profile, Robbie McEwen told me he rode that. It's not hardly there at all. Nothing to worry about.
We expect the breakaway to be caught. There are some strong riders in this breakaway, and worth mentioning, Paul, Chris Bookmans in that breakaway. He was the rider that rather pushed Sagan out of that mid-term sprint, and he got punished for it.
Yeah, when the referees went back and looked at the video afterwards, they said that they felt that he'd moved out of his line. He'd impeded the progress of Peter Sagan, so he's relegated to the back position of the main field that he was with. Contador here.
Contador, back wheel.
No panic, not at this stage of the game for Alberto Contador. He'll have a couple of teammates who'll come up alongside him in a short while and help him and pace him back to the main field. Mechanic not panicking. It's taken a while nowadays, Phil, by the way, to get the rear wheel locked in, because the Union Cycliste International in the old days used to have smooth dropouts, yes. So you could actually put the wheels in a lot quicker. Well, now, because of safety and health and safety, there's a little nodule on the end of the stays and the lugs at the bottom there, so the mechanic actually has to tighten up the quick release skewer before he can close it to lock the wheel in place. So that adds a couple of seconds onto a wheel change.
That's right, because if you buy a regular bike from a shop, you'll find that your wheel, it's possible for it to come undone, but it won't come off the bicycle because of those little lugs. Well, here's his teammates now beginning to wait for him, as always. Make sure they guide him safely back to the field. It's a routine change at this stage of the race. There's still a long way to go, 82 miles still to ride.
This is Sergio Paulinho, who was the silver medalist in the Olympic Games in Athens. Seems like an awful long way away. He got away towards the end on the run-in with Paolo Bettini.
There's Contador saying, I'm okay, let's get back on.
Well, Alberto Contador, Phil, has made no bones about the fact that he feels he will be stronger in the third week of the Tour. Now, Grand Tour riders normally improve like that. They start off slowly, they get into the race, they recover a lot better than some guys, and Alberto Contador is one of those men. He knows that if he wants to win the Tour de France, he has to attack. He's in 4th place overall at the moment, but he's looking for almost 4 minutes, and to attack, he needs to attack from a long way out. And what better place to start his ascent up the overall standings than the Mont Ventoux. We call it the Giant of Provence. It sticks out on the horizon, and you can see it from miles and miles away in the Rhone Valley. And it is at the top almost an airless ascent. It's 1,800 meters, almost 6,000 feet in altitude, but it's a scary climb for many, many riders.
It is a big challenge. The next big challenge of this year's Tour de France. A little bit hillier tomorrow. We've got a whole series of lower classed hills on the way down to the finish in Lyon. A breakaway may try to get away tomorrow and succeed. But that's tomorrow. Right now, the sprinters teams on the front. No sign.
Well, this breakaway not being given the big advantage that was handed out yesterday, because they're currently looking at creeping up to their largest advantage, 3 minutes and 43 seconds.
The riders passing the Collegiate Church of Saint-Ours at the moment as we look along the beautiful cornfields here, where they're now gathering corn at this time of the year. Now everybody seems to be dropping down amongst the team cars here. This is Peter Kenyuk, number 3, and in front of him is Ian Stannard, the man who was beaten by Mark Cavendish for the British title just before the start of the Tour, and they're all back there to look after number 1.
Well, you notice how Chris Froome has probably stopped at the side of the road for a natural break in the early part of the event today. But what you notice here is he's got 2 teammates who've stopped immediately alongside him to pace him back into the main field, in case, for example, he was to have a mechanical while he was trying to catch back into the main field.
Yeah, absolutely. Can't take any chances. He's looking forward to going back into the mountains. In fact, he says he can't wait to start climbing the steep hills again. So that's sending a subliminal message out, I would think, to those who think they can challenge him. There's no doubt that Froome will be attacked regularly in those mountains now, and they'll be testing out the Sky team to just see if they really are suspect. Now they're down to just 7 riders.
Well, it's been a very long, hard chase, and over the last 15 kilometers or 10 miles, the leaders covered it in 20 minutes and 37 seconds. The peloton covered that at 18 minutes 38. The difference in the speed, 5 kilometers an hour, and that's unbelievable, and it's pretty much all over by the shouting. But the question now is, will the peloton keep riding, knowing that they've eliminated a couple of good sprinters and a couple of good lead-out men?
I think they will. It's all down to 2 teams apparently at the moment. Belkin, and they have reason to ride hard, and also Amiga Pharma Quickstep on the right there. Just checking up, and these boys must have been wondering, what did we do wrong? Because they thought they were out for most of the race today. Now they're back in the lead group, and don't slip too far down because it's really tough at the back.
It certainly is, and I wonder if Amiga Pharma Quickstep are going to get any help here. Yes, well, 1 kilometre to go to the sprint point, and we'll see whether Mark Cavendish has got those legs here this afternoon. Up until now, the most successful rider at the intermediate sprints has always been Andre Greipel. Yeah. They don't have to worry about Marcel Kittel. He's not even challenged for those anyway. It's good to see that TJ Van Garderen did manage to get himself into this leading group, so it must have been one of his teammates as we saw the whoosh going by of the red and black jersey just before the feeding station.
It must have been. Cadel Evans is in this group as well, same team, and I don't think it was him. He looked a tall rider. Possibly Steve Morabito. Anyway, this is for the sprint for the points up for the green jersey now out on course today. 20 for the first rider. And I think this is the first time since the tour started, Paul, we've got everybody in the hat for the 20 points that matter.
Look on the right-hand side of that line of riders, 2 lime green jerseys. Mark Cavendish is not too far away. There's 20 points for the first rider to cross the line, 10 points for the 6th place rider, and 1 point for the 15th rider. And it's
look at the order.
Yeah, look at that. Cavendish in second, Sagan behind him, Greipel behind him.
Sabatini starts. He's the lead-out man, putting Cavendish on the front. I'm not sure who wants to be there. Sagan's got Cavendish wheel. Here comes Andre Greipel. He's been the king of the mid-term sprints throughout this tour, and it looks like he might again, as Andre Greipel gets the 20 points and Cavendish second, and the marginal gain then on Peter Sagan. He's still well ahead in that competition.
Yes, but what consistency as we look at this one more time. Cavendish getting the jump to begin with, but the power of Andre Greipel in these intermediate sprints is really quite amazing to watch. But the consistency of Peter Sagan, Phil, is amazing. He's had himself 1 stage victory. He's finished second on 3 occasions. He's finished third on 2 occasions and 4th on 1 occasion at the race finishes. That's why he leads this points competition, and he's, I think, going to be a very, very difficult man to beat.
Yes, 20-17-15 for the first 3 riders there. So Sagan concedes only 5 points to Greipel. Mark Cavendish is second up overall in that competition after his second place in the sprint final yesterday. Now, the race will continue on. That's just the sprint here. Looks like Cavendish has a teammate who's been to the cars, delivering the drinks back up to him. Now the sprint's out the way. The Belkin boys are getting on with it because their 2 riders are in this breakaway, as they have Ten Dam in 6th place, now up to 5th, and Molliner in 3rd, now up to 2nd, on a day nobody expected any changes. The dramatic chase across France continues on here, and Belkin have been putting 49% of the effort in on the front of this field, and they've now shot off their team. Robert Gesink has gone off. We've also got all the team that stopped to wait for Alejandro Valverde, 2 groups down. Look at them now. They've been dropped in another split in the chase group, as Valverde is trying to reach the leaders again in this group in the middle of the road that have picked up now Pierre Rolland. But the gap is stretching quickly now. We've just taken another brunt force of the wind, and it split the front group as well into 3 bunches. Look at that Australian flag. As they race now down to Saint-Amand-Montrond, where we've never finished before in a road race format. It just shows that the wind direction today has torn the peloton apart. There's still every likelihood that that chase group will not rejoin the front.
Well, this is at the back of the race. This is the man who was the winner of yesterday's stage, Marcel Kittel. He got caught out in the crosswinds, and he's now currently riding around about 2 minutes in arrears. In the leading group, when it formed, the yellow jersey group, was Alejandro Valverde, who was in 2nd place in the overall standings. But all of a sudden, he had a mechanical incident going through the feeding station. Maybe made a little bit of an error in not taking a bike from one of his teammates, and he's been left behind now to try and get himself back into this race. He got to within 40 seconds, then all of a sudden 2 teams, Omega Pharma, Quick-Step and Belkin, put the hammer down once again, and look what damage is being done. It's 1 minute and 40 seconds back to this 2nd group on the road.
Yes, and we've also here now Dal Olympia of Orica Green Edge has also been left now. He was the yellow jersey for a couple of days in the opening week. Chris Froome and his men in black. They've lost Richie Porte in the last 5 minutes as well. He's been dropped. This is Alejandro Valverde here, and he just shakes his head and talks to Marcel Kittel, yesterday's winner, and that looks like a shake of head of resignation.
Looked pretty much like resignation to me. I have to say, this has been an unbelievable race here. Look at the damage that the wind can do. It's hard to understand what it's like when you get a crosswind. You've got to shelter from the wind at 45 degrees to the rider in front of you. But if you're not right on that wheel, if you're not at 45 degrees, you just get popped out of the back. And look how far back it is to Valverde and the rest.
I think they've realised that was the moment of truth there. Valverde and Pierre Rolland put into the chase group by flat tyres. But now not even their strength could reduce that gap. It's opened again. Now remember, that group came to 10 seconds at one stage before it went back. Now, if the race were to continue like this towards the finish, Froome would lead the Tour from Bauke Mollema by 3:37. Alberto Contador will be in third place at 3:54, and Lawrence ten Dam up into fifth as well, and Valverde would slip down to seventh, more than 5 minutes off the pace.
Yes, but those are not the final gaps. There could be gaps, could be a lot bigger than that by the time we get down to the end, because these guys have still not laid down the arms. And it's all because of the power of the two teams from the northern part of Europe, the Belgian team Omega Pharma Quickstep and the Dutch team, Team Belkin.
It's heading up to 2 minutes today. And as we watch here, Sylvain Chavanel just drive on the front. They know what they've created now. Well, what we're seeing is one of the most dramatic days on flat roads in France I can recall in modern times. A great pursuit as they've started to break clear of the chase now. There was an attack that came from Omega Pharma Quickstep, the team of Mark Cavendish. When the wind changed direction, they've opened the gap. They isolated Marcel Kittel, the three-time stage winner. He is still in the chase group. And then, unluckily, Alejandro Valverde, second overall, had a flat tyre. He's now been relegated to the second group. And then Pierre Rolland, the King of the Mountains leader, also. And although they chase back to 43 seconds, the gap is now out to 2 minutes and 17 seconds as we run now for the last 22.5 miles. Believe what has happened in literally 30 seconds ago. Saxo Tinkoff has gone to the front of the peloton at the head group, and we'll show you what happened. This is Saxo Tinkoff. They'll be the new team leaders tonight, but watch, because the elastic snaps immediately and the yellow jersey of the Tour de France is caught lacking. Now remember that Chris Froome's already lost Richie Porte today. He's in a group behind. Now this is it. They really put their head down. They went over the top of the Belkin squad, said we'll do our share of the work, and then all of a sudden the wind got between them and they're clear of the field. This is a most incredible day in the Tour de France. There's Chris Froome realising the gap is forming. Mark Cavendish gesticulating there to Sylvain Chavanel because they've just been dispatched from that front group. Oh, they're on the back wheels of the front group. Now, have we seen the rejoining here? Don't think we have. There's the groups now as they continue to chase. Paul, this is most amazing. But alertness by Mark Cavendish and his team.
Well, they are the guys who started this move off. Also alertness by a certain Peter Sagan as well, Phil, because he saw that happening and scuttled straight up there to do it. But, you know, we have heard Alberto Contador say he feels that this is the strongest team he's ever brought to the Tour de France. And today we're seeing them on the eve of the last week of the race. They're showing today that they're still very strong in depth.
Well, do you remember Contador in the Tour of Spain, which he went on to win? He, on a day nobody expected it, he went out on the attack and he won the race. And here he is now looking to gain some time back, lost to Chris Froome, because Froome has missed this split and he doesn't really have the team around him now to chase it down.
Well, he has three teammates, but he has to figure out now whether he's got any mates in that group behind him, because Cadel Evans is in that group and Cadel has got a number of teammates up alongside him. Will Cadel Evans and BMC do any of the pacemaking? There are the three riders on the front there from Team Sky, four riders from Team Sky, so they're not in too bad a situation. But I tell you what, I bet they wish they still had Richie Porte with them.
And you're right about Cadel Evans, because two riders chasing there from BMC as well. Now, Richie Porte sitting there. This is why you have a strong team in the Tour. It's up to them to pull him back into the position where he doesn't lose time today, but they were getting very, very quickly towards the finish. Just 28 kilometers still to go. There's still time to open this gap to a minute or more.
This is the time when you have to be calm and collected if you're leading the Tour de France. You must not panic, and that's what Chris Froome has to do now. That's what his team management have to tell him in the group behind. Calm down, relax. If it's going to come back together, it will. If it doesn't, you're only going to lose 30 seconds or a minute. But there's a lot of riders in that group behind are still keen to keep the pressure on.
This is Saxo Tinkoff, a mass attack. They've quickly been joined by the Belkin team, as we just see here. Peter Kenyuk slipped to the back of this group here. And still a little bit injured from when he was knocked off his bike. Let's have a look. There's the leaders, and that is the pursuit. And remember, they've reduced the size of that second bunch because they've dropped some riders down there as well. OK, let's remind you, though, of our Road ID pop quiz. And for answers to the previous day's questions, go to roadid.com. Today's question is, who was the first North American to wear the yellow jersey at the Tour de France? Head on over to roadid.com/TDF to make your prediction. Get entered to win daily prizes. And come and join us on the Tour de France, the VIP trip next year. Now, we're seeing the Tour de France on a quiet, flat day in the middle of the country turn the race upside down, and now it is Contador out to beat Chris Froome. Most amazing day. We're going into town of Le Château-Châteauneuf at the moment, and also in this lead group, and it's still ahead by about 12 seconds over that yellow jersey group, is also Roman Kreuziger, the other man who's high up overall with Contador. So the races continue on the way, and they're looking at each other here now as we've got Saxo Tinkoff really giving this their best shot. Seconds count. A team time trial for sure now. Current leaders, Mollema, Contador, Kreuziger, Laurens ten Dam, Fuglsang. But in that front group now, we've got Fuglsang as well. These are the leaders here, Paul, and Kreuziger and Contador are stealing a march here if they can keep this pressure on. It's opening.
Well, I tell you what, these guys were sitting in second row for a long time while they allowed Omega Pharma, Quick-Step and Belkin to do all of the pacemaking. And then when they saw that the gap was starting to slip down a fraction, they went straight out and took advantage of it.
Peter Sagan is up there as well, so he's stolen a march. He's going to match Cavendish wheel for wheel if that is to be the case when they stay away to the finish. So they were very alert.
Well, they were. There you can see four teammates of Chris Froome at the front end of this group, but they're starting to see the gap open.
Well, the teammates of Chris Froome there trying to organise it, but they're looking a little bit disorganised down there at the moment, and they've allowed some serious leaders in the Tour de France to try and close down the gap which they are behind Chris Froome overall. We've got Contador and Kreuziger and ten Dam in that leading group, who occupy fourth, fifth and sixth at the moment.
Well, you've got to take your hat off to Saxo Bank. A very astute move to move at once they saw the impetus moving away from the front end of the main field, and they've taken advantage again on a day when nobody expected very much to happen to try and eat back into the advantage of Chris Froome.
Don't forget that Contador is going into this race today 3 minutes and 54 seconds behind Chris Froome. Everybody expected him to wait until we got to the mountains, but he's trying to chip away a few seconds today. As the race situation is on the road at the moment, Froome is 3:26 ahead of Wout Mollema. Contador is up into third place. He will be 3:43 behind his teammate Kreuziger in this lead as well, 3 seconds more than that. They're going to give them everything now. We're racing to the last 20 kilometres of the day. Michael Rogers also knows where he's got the Australian who left Team Sky and joined Saxo Bank, now working against his old teammates.
23 seconds now is the gap between the leading group and the yellow jersey group. And I tell you one thing, Phil, I bet Team Belkin are very happy they came in to sponsor their team just before the start of this tour.
They struck gold. There's the yellow jersey. Now, all he can do is sit and watch here. He's not going to waste his energy driving this chase group. He's got time in the bank, so he's relying on his three teammates to try and do something for him. But these boys, are they finishing off what Omega Pharma Quick-Step started a couple of hours ago? What a race it is. Occupied third, fourth, fifth and sixth in this race are now gaining time over the leader of the Tour. Currently circa 37 seconds. We're getting conflicting reports from the race. 5 minutes 20 now back to Alejandro Valverde's group, losing big time. This dramatic pursuit across France, and it's the Saxo Tinkoff riders who are driving it. Here's the names for you. Bout Mollinger, he'll be up to third tonight, might be second. Alberto Contador, Roman Kreuziger, Lawrence ten Dam, they're all going to be in the top 5 riders tonight. Michael Rogers is driving the team for Contador as well. Sylvain Chavanel, Roche, and of course we've got the sprinters here in Peter Sagan and Mark Cavendish too, as they head down towards the finish. Another good sprinter too in Daniela Benatti. So this is an absolutely amazing race now. 41 seconds is the gap to the Groupe Maillot Jaune of Chris Froome, which means at this moment, Paul, he's lost 41 seconds of his lead to Bout Mollema, Lawrence ten Dam, Roman Kreuziger and Alberto Contador. Now, how much do you think they can lose, or will they come back?
Well, I have a feeling they're going to survive here this afternoon. You know, that's why Chris Froome has been looking for every possible second in the first week of the Tour de France. That's why he attacked like a maniac up to Aix Trois Domaines to get time initially. Then that's why he rode such a hard individual time trial to give himself that buffer. He can afford to lose 1.5 minutes on a run-in towards a finish like this, but he wouldn't like to give it away. He will keep his team riding as long and as hard as possible to limit his losses. But he's not going to lose the overall lead at the end of the day. But we will see a slight change in the standings.
Well, if it keeps going on like this, he'll go from an overnight lead of 3 minutes 25 to an overnight lead of about 2 3/4 minutes, presuming they don't gain too much more time. The distance is on the side now of Froome, because they can't gain too much in just 5 and a bit, 9 kilometres, miles of racing. But it's 47 seconds nonetheless.
Still continuing to stretch out, and that's because Alberto Contador has got 6 men from his team in this group, 5 men with him, and strong bike riders too. When you look at the names, when you think of Michael Rogers, you've gone up a little bit more now, 47 seconds, at 7 minutes back to Alejandro Valverde, who started the day in 2nd place overall. His chances of a podium in the Tour de France now are gone.
He's going to be outside the top 10 in the race when he comes to the finish. He had the flat tyre and the race was fully committed. He was in the first group and he's now in the second group on the road.
To stretch out, and that's because Alberto Contador has got 6 men from his team in this group, 5 men with him, and strong bike riders too. When you look at the names, when you think of Michael Rogers, you've gone up a little bit more now, 47 seconds, at 7 minutes back to Alejandro Valverde, who started the day in 2nd place overall. His chances of a podium in the Tour de France now are gone.
He's going to be outside the top 10 in the race when he comes to the finish. He had the flat tyre and the race was fully committed. He was in the first group and he's now in the second group on the road. Well, it looks as though Sivsov has now been dropped, so Sky have only got 2 riders left up there now. There he is. So Sky have got 2 men now to try and close that gap down. Sky is shedding the men one after another.
Well, they are giving their all to make sure that Chris Froome doesn't lose too much time in this run-in towards the finish, but they're being chipped away at one by one now. When we went through the Pyrenees, I thought Movistar was going to be the dangerous team for the last week of this bike race. But you know what? As we approach the last third week of this race, it's turning out to be Alberto Contador's Saxo Tinkoff. Look at that, 6 riders from one team getting into a 14-man leading group, and it's up another 2 seconds, 49 seconds.
It's nudging out towards the minute, and that would be a big loss for Chris Froome. And it's not just the time, it's the way the team seems to be imploding as well at the moment. And Chris Froome must be feeling pretty lonely down there just now. Geraint Thomas and Ian Stannard are the only 2 riders left. And we're hearing on race radio that Geraint Thomas is also in trouble. That's Ian Stannard.
Well, they've chased hard as they can, and they now have to limit their losses. But the impetus, Phil, is going out of this group. I would think that if we're not careful, that Chris Froome could see himself losing a good 1.5 minutes on this stage, because there's still 7.5 kilometres to go to the finish. It's up to 52 seconds.
They're coming up to this little rise, which we were told was not significant by the people talking to the sprinters, but at these speeds, it could actually cause the riders to split up. The man of the moment, Alberto Contador, fighting his way back into the Tour de France today as a real player. 54 seconds the gap now.
Well, in that leading group of riders, there's going to be a big battle for the sprint, because I'm fairly convinced now they're going to survive. Just number 9, just having a quick chat there. I noticed Geraint Thomas, but it's all about how Mark Cavendish is going to survive. He's got 2 teammates in this group, which I think will be good for him. He's got Niki Terpstra and the very, very strong Sylvain Chavanel. On the other hand, also the sprinter Peter Sagan, he's got a teammate up there as well, the Polish rider Maciej Bodnar.
Yes, he's riding in his Polish jersey, as we can just see the group here. Cavendish and Sagan are riding in tandem. Sagan behind Mark Cavendish at the moment. But these boys are going to keep the pressure on all the way to the line. If the sprinters start to play cat and mouse, as it were, this is about time to win the Tour de France. And the man most likely to win the most is Alberto Contador just now.
But he hasn't outfoxed the other riders who are around him in the overall standings. Bauke Mollema and Roman Kreuziger, his own teammate, and Laurens ten Dam. 57 seconds now. We're actually creeping up to the 1-minute margin. Chris Froome has been put back onto the back foot.
Well, Chris Froome is in jail here. He cannot get out. He can't get to the front and waste energy chasing. He's relied on his teammates. There's only 2 of them left, and they're looking extremely tired at the moment. So he's just having to watch, wait and hope that the remaining few kilometres pass by very, very quickly indeed.
Well, 59 seconds the gap. It's now up to the French team AG2R La Mondiale to do the pacemaking. Everybody is running out of firepower. Everybody is running out of steam, apart from Alberto Contador, who's got 5 men with him, 6 riders from one team in a group of 14. That just goes to show they caught everybody off guard. Sylvain Chavanel on his coral-coloured bicycle there comes to the front and looks over his shoulder to see the blue and yellow jerseys of Saxo Tinkoff.
1 minute, it's rounded out now as we see the champion of the time trial do a big turn there. He's the man that helped open the gap originally once they spotted the move, because he's on Mark Cavendish's team.
Into the wheel of Peter Sagan.
Yes, they're just going to follow each other and make the move. It'll be very much a one-on-one sprint between the 2 fastest finishers in the world. What a way to win a sprint, to take part in a race like today. It was Cavendish's team that started the trouble, and it's Contador's team who is adding to it.
Well, Contador looking very comfortable there, I have to say. Very happy with this move that he's made. He and the team took advantage of all of the pacemaking that was done early on by Omega Pharma Quickstep and by Team Belkin. And now they're going to finish it off this afternoon with what has been a phenomenal day of racing. Niki Terpstra now comes up to the front. He's going to try and see if he can just cause a little bit of a surprise here.
He's flown off, because that's the advantage. 1 minute, 2 seconds. There's got to be reaction from the chase. We're looking for the 1 kilometre very, very shortly now. It's a good move. It's a good tactic.
What he's done, he's taken the sting out of Cannondale's move there, because they've had to force down to get him back into the fold, and that has put a little move. And that's a great ride there by Terpstra. Now, sitting in a good position is Mark Cavendish going round the corner. And this is the moment now when Cannondale are going to have to keep the pace nice and high. But still, the Saxo Tinkoff. Look at the left-hand side. You've got Sylvain Chavanel. He is going to be the lead-out man. Cavendish is right on the wheel of Peter Sagan in the green jersey.
This is through a little triangle just before the finish to avoid a roundabout. They'll swing off to our right and their left. He has got Cavendish behind. Chavanel is going to bring them into the straight. And look at Sagan looking where Cavendish is. He holds the inside very tightly, because Cavendish could get through here as they line up for the finish.
He's got to wait, though, because it's about 450 metres from that corner. Sagan is right in second position. Let's not forget that yesterday Mark Cavendish was beaten right on the front there. Chavanel is trying to turn himself inside out. Now you can see Sagan is at the front, a long way from the finish.
They delivered Sagan to the front, and now Sagan has had to hesitate and take the wheel of Mark Cavendish. But Mark Cavendish and his team have done all the work to create an incredible day, has made and taken revenge, because he was clearly clear, and that is his 25th victory. And nobody in the world of the Tour de France has ever won 25 stages of the road race only. So he's got his own little slice of history this year.
It's now all about the clock. At 1 kilometre to go, it's around about 1 minute and 7 seconds. And I have to say, today, Chris Froome has really been put to the test. We're going to have to see whether or not Andre Greipel can come out of that pack and get himself a few more points. He's going to be sprinting for 15 points.
Now, as they come up to the same straight, keep your eye on the clock as it counts here. This is the most important part. He's heading up towards that minute. Chris Froome is in the centre of the thing. Greipel will try to take out the sprint. Marcel Seberg bringing him to the fore here in the polka dot jersey, in the spotted shorts there. He's in second place as he tries to change wheels here, Greipel. Now he sees the finish. So he'll take 15th place on the stage. He'll get some points for that, and that's what he wants. But he could not get back up. And the most important thing, watch the clock. 1 minute 8 seconds as they hit the line is the loss today for Chris Froome against 4 dangerous men.
Well, after yesterday's deception of being beaten by Marcel Kittel, Mark Cavendish was expecting a big bunch sprint here this afternoon, Phil. Well, there was only 14 guys left at the front of this race when he came into the line, but he made no doubt about the fact that he wanted to get that win. You can see Cavendish is the winner of the stage, ahead of Peter Sagan, who still continues to get lots and lots of points, and that's Sagan's 4th second-place finish on the stage so far.
Not surprisingly, he is all smiles here as he's with Sylvain Chavanel, who led him out in the end. As we look here at a complex which is a business support program, it supports tourism in the City of Gold. Mark Cavendish has got his 25th Tour victory out on the road. The clock will continue to count for an awful long time today, and most of the Movistar team, but not Quintana. He's finished in the same group as Chris Froome.
Well, that was Alejandro Valverde in person, Phil, who was doing the pacemaking at the front end of that line. But he will tumble down the overall standings tonight.
People brought home the yellow jersey bunch. Well, an amazing day. Mark Cavendish making amends for his race into Saint-Malo as he takes the win this time around. But this, as it turned out, was all about time today. And the man who lost it, Valverde, and indeed the race leader, Chris Froome. We'll take a move by Sylvain Chavanel, leading Sagan. When Chavanel swung off, Sagan didn't want to be on the front, but on the front he was. He was almost tempting Cavendish to make his move, but this time Cavendish was not going to let anybody get by him once he got in the driving seat. 25th stage win historically for him, more than any other rider in the Tour de France throughout history in road races. So Cavendish got the stage, and Chavanel was the first to congratulate him. The clock was now ticking, of course, on the arrival of the yellow jersey. And as Andre Greipel, the sprinter left behind, cleaned up in 15th place, the yellow jersey crossed the line, time gap 1 minute 9 seconds, and far from happy. And then still, something like 4.5, 5 miles out was the shape of Valverde. It was taking him almost 10 minutes on Froome to come home to the line. So as he gets across to the line, there's the situation. Mark Cavendish joins Andre Leduc, but Cavendish has won more road race stages than anybody on that list, including Eddy Merckx and Bernard Hinault. I think Mark is now being interviewed.
That was some bike race. I mean, so much happened, but your guys booted it off. That's where it all began.
It was incredible. We talked about it a little bit. I mean, it's incredible. We talked about it. We knew the wind was strong. And I just said to Gert, I said, like, strong enough to break it now. This was after 60k, and Tony's like, wait a bit longer. Next thing, Gert goes. And it just kicked off then, you know. It wasn't strong enough to break it, but we just kept going. Then Saxo went later, and then it's incredible. So happy, so proud of the guys. They just rode out of their skin today. Out of their skin, like every one of them. And it's incredible to be able to win that. As
you say, going from just 60 into the race, a hell of a long way still to go. That first move got rid of Marcel Kittel. You then had Andre Greipel in that group. And when Saxo went, you had to read that move right, didn't you?
Yeah, I nearly missed it. And then Kwiatkowski had been riding, so his legs were a bit gassed. They went, put it in the gutter. Kwiatkowski got me halfway across. I'd been sat on all day. So I just said, move left, you move left. I just sprinted, boom, came round someone and then got in, managed to just get in. Like, when echelons start, it's kind of like, you know, if you have that feeling you fall through ice, you know, you got like 5 seconds. You got 5 seconds or it's over. And that's exactly what it's like in a national. You know, you've got 5 seconds to make it right, otherwise that's it. And I knew I had it this split tap, boom, sprinted across, and we were gone then. But it wasn't easy, but I'm incredibly lucky to have those guys, you know. We're a Belgian team, we're you know, the guys are experienced at it, they're strong at it, and along with Belkin, you know, it was a good combination to get that first move going. And then, yeah, the finish, it was just that. I knew Sagan, with just one guy, I knew we'd be able to, if I stayed behind him, I knew then I'd be able to get it, you know. So I just stayed behind him, and yeah, I was able to win. I'm so happy there.
Win number 25.
Absolutely amazing. What a graphic description of a really tough day on the stage of the Tour de France. Let's have a look then at the Michelob Ultra overall standings tonight. Chris Froome, yes, he's still the leader. He led by 3:25. He now leads a different man, Mollema, by 2:28. Contador's third, 2:45. Kreuzinger's teammate 3 seconds back of that. And Lawrence Ten Dam on the Belkin team, he's the best place there, fifth, their second best place rather, 3 minutes and 1. They've got 2 men in the top 5. Jakob Fuglsang wants a high podium finish in Paris. He's done himself the world of good. He's up to 6th. Kwiatkowski, he doesn't improve, and Quintana is down there. Considerable part of the distance, only one climb behind us though.
Yes, that's the town we left from this morning, Saint-Pourçain-sur-Sioule. The riders have a fairly flat start, but when they get to the middle part, they start to get a lot of little climbs, which are going to really, I think, break up the race towards the end. I have a feeling, because of this unpredictable Tour de France that we've got this year, that although there are 7 categorised climbs on the race route on the way down to Lyon, I think we'll see a big bunch sprint, because Mark Cavendish, I think, is starting to get the taste of victory. And, you know, he's never won less than 3 stages in a Tour de France, apart from the first one that he rode and abandoned. And those climbs down towards the end there, I think you'll get over those very fast if you're a sprinter.
Well, I'll tell you what, they've not allowed this to go clear, and because of that, the average speed is well ahead of schedule again. And let's remind ourselves, Todd, this is the day before we go mountaineering in Provence. Back to you. Welcome to the roads of the Route du Tour de France. It's the 14th stage, it's 119 miles, and the race is on. Paul, look at the length of the peloton as they chase down now this leading group of some 18 riders. It's another great day for bike racing. The Palmer's Coca-Cola Formula for Men weather report tells us that 76 degrees, light winds, and the forecast sunny. And I'll tell you what, look at the length of the peloton, because they won't let these 18 riders out of their sight.
Well, there's 18 riders in this leading group. The first hour of the race, Phil, they covered 30 miles. They're not having a day off after yesterday. It was a dramatic stage yesterday. And right now, one team has seriously missed out on the breakaway. It's a team from Spain, Euskaltel-Euskadi, and they are trying to pull this race all back together.
Yeah, we thought it might get away, and today, because of the big climb tomorrow of Mont Ventoux, the riders would say, OK, let them go. They're not going to affect the destiny of the yellow jersey. And on Andrew Talansky, the American from Miami, in this breakaway, well, he probably thought he'd read it right and a chance up the overall. It was all started by Jens Voigt, who else? And now these 18 riders have got together. There's 14 of the 22 teams in the Tour de France with representatives in this league group. And because Euskaltel-Euskadi missed out, it looks like they've been ordered to chase it down.
Yes, they tried very, very hard. It started off really with the move by Jens Voigt, the oldest man in the race at 41 years of age. He was certainly looking for the move to succeed. It's an ideal terrain for a breakaway to succeed today, because we've got a lot of climbs. We've got five fourth category climbs and 2 third category climbs, which are ideal to launch an attack like this. But because a couple of big teams have missed out, the chase has been on right from the very start.
Well, here we are arriving at Charlier at the moment, and I can tell you that these 18 riders between them have ridden a massive 75 Tours de France. So it's full of experience. There are 4 first-timers in here. It's been back to 30 seconds. It's gone out again at the moment, showing 55 seconds. But they will not let it go, and this is creating an incredibly fast race today. They are just scorching along the road to France, and we never expected this, but then we never expected what happened yesterday, did we?
No, not at all. The man, you talk about statistics, Phil, the man at the back there, number 129, Juan Jose Rojas, has finished 27 times in the top 10 of the Tour de France, and he's yet to win a stage. I wonder if today will be his lucky day.
There's always a chance. We are, by the way, running 13 minutes ahead of the fastest time expected here in this town. Let's have a look then at our Cadillac performance predictions. And somehow one of us managed to win yesterday despite that very unpredictable split in the race. And Talansky is in this breakaway with his experienced team captain David Miller. So the breakaway clear here, but the chase at 55 seconds, Paul. We're running 30 minutes ahead of fastest time. I can't believe it. I thought the boys would have said we've got to have an easy ride before tomorrow. It's the longest stage as well tomorrow.
Well, there's two factors in today's race, Phil. For a lot of the riders in this main field here, they feel that it might be the last chance that the sprinters have got to have a bit of glory before we get up to the Champs-Élysées a week tomorrow. And then for a lot of other guys, they figure it's the last chance to get into the breakaway. So that's why we've got such a hard and fast race.
Well, many of you told us how you enjoyed yesterday's coverage of a terrific bike race. Who could have predicted that Valverde would lose 10 minutes or Contador would gain 69 seconds over the race leader? We're all started. We'll take a break.
Well, it's TJ Van Garderen, 39. Michael Albacini is a very good rider for Orica Green Edge. He's the rider on the far side in the lime green and white and blue jersey. He is a very big opportunist. He's looking for the moves here this afternoon, hoping that this breakaway does survive. But it's been pegged now at 2 minutes and 15 seconds. And I think these guys are actually going to try and conserve a little bit of energy because they know that there could well be a chase back in the last hour of the race.
Well, we'd expect it, but when we've got 14 teams represented, and quite a few teams, 4 teams, have got 2 riders in this breakaway as well, there's not a lot of people left to chase. And so the sprinters may have to take a back seat today, and this realistically is the last chance of a sprint before the last day of the Tour, a week tomorrow in Paris, because we have an horrendous week in the Alps coming up.
Well, it's a good situation for the man who leads the points competition, Peter Sagan, because all of the big heavy points will be taken away by that leading group of riders. But guys like Greipel and Kittel, I think they would like to have another crack at a stage victory.
Yeah.
Kittel is proving to be a very, very fast rider. Makes it a little bit complicated, though, for those two guys because they've each got a man in the breakaway. You can see number 22 here has got into the breakaway for Lotto Belisol, and that's Lars Bak.
That's Kadri Want's service from behind. See by the French flag up there's not much wind around today, which is exactly what the riders are appreciating. People on the left with the green hands for the green jersey. Past them by the caravan, running an hour ahead of the Tour.
Well, they'll be very, very happy, Phil, as we get to within half a kilometre to the top of the Côte de la Croix-Couverte, which means the covered cross, by the way, if we're going to do our French lessons here this afternoon.
Yep.
And as you said, none of these riders really dangerous in the King of the Mountains competition because they haven't marked any points so far since the start of this race. That competition led by the Frenchman, Pierre Rolland.
Well, this is only a 4th category climb, but it obviously is in a catchment area where plenty of people knew the Tour was coming. Massive crowd.
Well, let's not forget, this is a big weekend for France as well, because we had the American Independence Day almost over a week ago. This weekend is the Bastille Day weekend. It's the 14th of July, the French national holiday tomorrow. And I would think a lot of these people will move away from here and be on the slopes of the Mont Ventoux.
Bet you like it, not that far away. It's about 300 kilometres from here. Over the top it comes. And it looks as though it is Lars Bak. No, it's not. It's Radio Shack.
Bakeland.
But Baklands. And it continues his great form in this year's Tour. So, remember Jan Baklands? He was the man that led the Tour and won a surprise stage on the island of Corsica. Seems a long time ago now. But he's still finding great form in this year's Tour de France. He's in the break and he's just won a point in the King of the Mountains. See you in a moment. They're not really coordinated anymore now. It's split a few moments ago. It's come back together again. 1 or 2 guys getting a bit twitchy about the fact that not everybody is helping each other here. As we watch at the moment, the pace at the front there from the Cofidis rider Igor Garcia. 2 kilometres to the green jersey sprint, and nobody interested in this group. Rojas is the best placed in this sprint, but a long way behind Peter Sagan, who leads this competition. 357 points. Cavendish coming to second place at 273. Greipel slipped down to third. They're all back in the peloton, and for the first time, as you said, Paul, for the first time, there's no points for the peloton today in the sprint, because there are 18 riders here in this group.
Yeah, Marcel Kittel in fourth place, and he never actually went for any of the intermediate sprints, but he's just got his massive number of sprints because of his 3 individual stage victories, which makes me think, Phil, a little bit later on, I think Argos Shimano might come to the front and try and chase this group down, but it's so hard to pull back an 18-man lead group.
I'm just wondering if they will pull it back today. I've just got a feeling. We'll see how it goes. There is a series of hills coming up on the riders now. Once we get the sprint over with, we climb away from the sprint point over a small climb, but it is third category, so a little bit steeper than we've seen so far today. And then we've got a few. We actually climb a col, which is the French for mountain, soon after that, at 64 kilometres from the finish. But again, can't be that bad because it's only rated third category. This is Pavel Brut at the back, waving his hand. More drinks please required in the engine room as they just continue towards that sprint. I'm not so sure we will see too much of a sprint, but watch out for rider 129, because Rojas is the best sprinter in this group, and he is in the top 7 riders in the points race.
Well, after losing out so much yesterday, starting the day with second place overall for Alejandro Valverde, they will be looking for a bit of redemption this afternoon, and quite possibly looking for the 1,500 euros, or around about $2,000 prize purse for the first rider to come across the line.
Well, maybe Talansky will go for that. He's not a bad finisher when he wants to be. Davy Miller's moved up. This is Talansky nearest us at the moment in blue, going the wrong way at 300 metres to go. Rojas has moved right up and looks as though he is going to go and stick his nose out front as Jens Voigt sets the pace just at the front. Apart from the prize purse today, none of these riders are going to tickle the overall leaderboard in the race for that green jersey in Paris. And so, there, what a sprint. Look at that. I can't believe it. Won by a clear length, Rojas.
And it was the man that I was expecting. It was JJ Rojas, 1,500 euros in the bank for him, and that's about $2,000.
Well, that's really livened the pace up. It was so high, they've actually got 3 riders away now from the front group. The champion of France, Arthur Vichot. And these are the boys that tried to reach them. They really did, and in the end realised they couldn't in the peloton. They're all having a chat now, but they gave it their best shot. For over an hour they drove the peloton to this enormous average speed today of 30 miles an hour. It's going to come off a bit now, but they realised they couldn't get across. They dragged the peloton to within 30 seconds, and then they found they were running away. So that's the situation as we take a break. All of the time.
Well, Johnny Hogeland is the rider here who wears the red, white and blue of the Dutch National Championship, but he made a real name for himself a couple of years ago when he had a nasty accident. A television car was overtaking the breakaway of 4 riders that he was in and just bounced them into the breakaway, and he went through a barbed wire fence and cut himself to pieces.
Yeah, if only it hadn't been barbed wire, he might have got away from that unscathed, but it tore into pieces. And ironically, the same day, Paul, he took the lead in the King of the Mountains, and he had to go up on the podium, and he was crying and he was pained. All he wanted to do is get a hospital. Even
more ironically, Phil, his dad was at the finishing line that day for the stage, and it's taken him a long time psychologically to get back into the sport of professional cycling, and the guy who actually knocked him off to this day has still never contacted him to apologise.
No, and there's still a wanted notice out for him as well, I believe, because they're not really sure who it was for some reason. Anyway, the Tour is another year and another time, and now Johnny Hogeland is the champion of the Netherlands, and he's trying to bridge to the leaders. Into the heart of the peloton here. Nobody worried too much. All of the pressure is on Team Sky, if that's what we call it at this moment in time, as the 18 front runners head towards Lyon. 63 seconds back. Cunego is still riding along. He's about only 17 seconds behind Hogeland, so on the descent they might yet get it back together. Oroz is reported. We've never seen him. Well, we've probably run out of television cameras. We've never seen Oroz, but he is riding ahead of the peloton by about a minute and a half. And the peloton themselves over 4 minutes back at the moment. That's the spread of the Tour de France just at this moment.
Yes, it is, and that little acceleration there may well make it that bit more difficult for this man, Johnny Hugelin, to reintegrate that group of riders at the front. So if I was him, in fact, I'd look over my shoulder and try and ascertain where Damiano Cunego was and wait for the Italian rider, because two pairs of legs are much better than one on their own.
Well, we're just looking at the moment of the chase by number 205. Johnny Hugelin is trying to reach them. It is a valiant chase. He's 63 seconds back of the leaders. And if he looked over his shoulder, the man he left on the climb, Cunego, is only 17 seconds behind him. But the peloton, the breakaway rather, is now preoccupied chasing Marcus Burkhardt, who's just gone off the front. There's the peloton on the descent. This is a long journey through the hillsides here, and basically it's the best part of 30 kilometres downhill.
Yes, and that's where we'll see speeds attained of very close to 50 miles an hour on these descents, 80 kilometres an hour. The main field, actually, Phil, appears to me, when we look down from the helicopter here, to have picked up their tempo a bit. They're looking for 4 minutes and 16 seconds, and I still have this belief in the back of my mind that we might have a last-ditch effort by the teams of the sprinters to try and pull back that breakaway before the finishing line in Lyon.
Well, as they say, time will tell. Johnny Hugelin getting all the cheers of the crowd here as we race through Valson. And we're still going through with a healthy 9 minutes ahead of the fastest schedule with the leaders on today's stage. They have not shown any respect at all to the longest stage of the race tomorrow, which finishes on top of Mont Ventoux.
I'd just like to tap Johnny Hugelin on the shoulder here, Phil, and let him know that now only 7 seconds behind him is Damiano Cunego.
Yeah.
I think he really should look over his shoulder and sit up and wait for the Italian, because the two of them, with their combined efforts, have got a much better chance of getting across that final 1.25 minutes to the leading group.
He definitely needs it, because he's lost 10 seconds here to that leading group since he came over the hill. Ian Stannard doing what he always does best, a real turn of teamwork on the front. Uzgati, they tried desperately to get into that break and failed, and now they're sitting at the back of the peloton, but they do have Oroz locked out in no man's land.
In fact, Race Radio now saying that Oroz, Phil, is actually sitting up and waiting for the main field because he hasn't been able to make contact with Johnny Hugelin or Damiano Cunego.
And this is Hugelin, so he's the first man on the road behind the 18 front runners. And according to our computer, in fact, they've now altered it, Paul. They've moved it out to 32 seconds now. And so he's pulling away from Damiano.
He's also losing time on the 18-man lead group.
Yes, you're right. 117, they're saying now. Jens Voigt here on the right, the man that really started it all. And he was quoted in the papers this morning saying the attacks aren't over yet in the Tour de France. And then he gets on his bike and attacks. Now, just looking at this, I think Hugelin, chatting with his team car, they're saying, look, wait for Cunego. No point in trying to go alone. He's cooling down his legs there. Maybe he's got a little problem, but cold water will feel good. It's very warm today, and the team has said, wait for the Lamprey rider. He's tried to reach him on the climb. It didn't work. And two can ride quicker than one. I thought for a moment he was going to cross that gap on the climb, but it wasn't to be. He was 55 seconds behind over the top. There in the distance you can see the cars behind Cunego. The peloton are still quite a way behind them as they continue to speed off this climb of the Col de Pion. Next climb will come, they'll top out with 19 miles left to run to the finish. The stage is flying by today. Oh, we've changed. We moved on. This is the Chateau d'Azergues.
This is the Châtillon d'Azergues. It's a 12th and 13th century castle, which was listed as a historical monument in 1937. The chapel, by the way, just alongside it there, is the chapel of Notre-Dame de Bon Secours.
Well, it's just one or two walls need a little bit of plaster of Paris on them, but apart from that, it's looking extremely nice there. The Château de Châtillon d'Azergues.
The chapel, by the way, Phil, was built originally in the 12th century on the site of an older construction. In fact, there are two chapels built on the top, one on top of the other.
It was listed as a historical monument as long ago as 1862. Very forward thinking. Well, the little ripples coming towards the end now. One man who might well make his move, you know, is David Miller in his group. He tweeted earlier, by the way, the race director of the Tour de France asked me to use my Twitter to offer safety guidance for the brilliant public on the road. I have 4 tips.
Okay, so we're waiting for the 4 tips.
We're waiting for the 4 tips because it's a different tweet. Do not stand on the road. It may seem unimaginable in the hours of waiting preceding the race, but when we do arrive, we use all of it. Very selfish, isn't it? Then he says, number 2.
Number 2, remove children, pets, chairs from the road when stepping back to avoid us. They may often not end up being forgotten in the panic.
They're more
often forgotten in panic.
And then bike riders appear further away through a camera lens, phone, iPad, than they actually are. Take a long shot, not a close-up. That's a very good one.
It is a very good one. The 4th one, cheer for me. We hear everything when passing, and most importantly, enjoy the spectacle. I'll be standing there with you soon.
Well, you know, by the end of this day, he might be standing on the podium as stage winner, because this is a typical Miller move to find a breakaway like this, and it could well be the breakaway that succeeds after nearly 2 weeks of breakaways being swept up for the sprinters.
Complicated one to pick here, though, Phil, because looking at the back, Bakelant, the rider who won into Ajaccio, has got a teammate, Jens Voigt.
Yeah.
2 very clever and astute riders. David Miller's got his teammate, Andrew Talansky, in there. Talansky's making a great operation today because he's moving up in the overall standings. He's going to finish the day quite possibly in 12th or 13th place overall.
Well, he's 13 minutes 11 seconds behind Froome. He's recovered 5 minutes and 47 at the moment. So yes, he's moving up on a day nobody expected it. First tour for Andrew, and he's ridden a very solid tour indeed. For Garmin Sharp, his team, the American squad, Stuart O'Grady chatting to fellow Australian. And it looks as though Cadel Evans is telling him a bit of a joke. I don't know.
Quick look down here. Looks like a cement factory.
Yeah, it's a long, tall chimney, and that's about all we know about it, but it is a long, tall chimney. There's the peloton as they still are under the escort of the men in black today. The sun eclipsing as they continue along. 5 minutes 47. They are not catching this breakaway. We are going to head up now to a breakaway lead of 6 minutes.
Waters as he comes up to the summit of this climb, and when you go through the crowd like that, it's like parting the waters.
I tell you what, we've just come up to a kilometre to the summit now, and I'm convinced, well, a third of a kilometre to the summit rather, and I'm convinced that Berghout is trying to soften these up for an attack by TJ Van Garderen.
Dausberg is here, Christoph. That's for one of the riders in the race. Plenty of badges out there. There's a flag there for the Lyonnais football club, which is where we are at the moment. This is the South African flag flying high there on the left and right hand side of the road, obviously for Daryl Impey, who was a yellow jersey wearer early on. There's the summit of the climb, and I can't see over the top of these guys, and in fact it's Jens Voigt who's going to get it.
Drives them over the top. Jens Voigt gets the only point available there because it was a 4th category climb, so he's got a point in the King of the Mountains competition. It makes no difference to the overall lead of Roland. Well, they are driving now in that breakaway. That's one of the small climbs. There are 2 more. The next one we top out at 15 kilometres to go, and it could be there. They'll choose to attack each other. Yes, thanks, Todd. They're picking up a slight tailwind for what it's worth today. They're coming to the town of La Tour de Salvagny. And again, the crowd's out in force today, enjoying a beautiful summer's day in the Rhône department of France. And the breakaway is going to start fighting it out amongst themselves very soon. It's the Swiss rider on the Australian Orica Green Edge team, Michael Albacini, on the front just now. It's being stalked by Rojas, the sprinter in the group. Oh, no, I beg your pardon, he's stalked by his teammate Viti at the front, because Rojas is sat right there at the back. He's the sprinter of this breakaway. Now their breakaway being led, bunch rather, being led by all of the men in Sky. Huge crowd on this climb of the Côte de Lausanne for the peloton, Paul. It's over 6 minutes now. They're just going to ride to the finish, and as you say, Andrew Talansky, the American who started the day 30 minutes down, is pulling back at the moment 6 of those minutes, which is a great catch for the first-time Tour rider.
Well, he's going to go very, very close to the position of Cadel Evans. I've got him up to 13th place so far in the afternoon, and just a few more seconds he'll be moving up into 12th place and overtaking Cadel Evans. But none of that is important to these guys because they're thinking long-term. They're not thinking of Andrew Talansky as a threat this year. I think Andrew Talansky will come back to the Tour de France in a couple of seasons' time as a possible overall contender. But here, this year, I think it's the year to learn.
Absolutely, and Geraint Thomas bringing him over the top of that climb, some 6 minutes behind the leaders. We've still got the 2 men in between, Damiano Cunego and Johnny Hugeland, as an attack goes from Albacini. This is the first now, I think we'll see, of many. Jens Voigt trying to get across.
Well, Jens Voigt scrambling behind. He was waiting for a little move to come. He will work hard here because he knows he's got a backup plan for Team Radio Shack. He's got Jan Bakelants in this group with him. So he will try and pull himself back to Albacini. Albacini hitting them, but I don't think this will be the move to succeed.
Well, this is the first attack, I think, of a few before it finally succeeds, if it does. 25 kilometres to go. Albacini brought to heel with that attack by Jens Voigt first of all. Blel Kadri is the next man across the gap, and then comes Julien Simon, and now an attack by David Miller. Miller's testing the water now.
Well, Miller knew that the moment to attack was just at the point where Albacini was brought back into the fold. Now, if he can stretch 10 or 15 bike lengths, this is a very good move. This guy has been a very good time trialist in the past, but this breakaway attempt, Phil, I think is too far out from the finish. If I was one of the team managers now, I'd say to the guys, just keep it calm, just wait, let these little flurry of attacks happen. Watch out for the climb at 15 kilometres to go. That's the ideal place to launch a move.
Well, I think we've had 2 weakeners now. Miller and Albacini have tried. Miller is an opportunist winner, you know, and if he gets in these small breakaways, then he often gets the victory. And we saw it last year when he did this, and Miller is the sort of rider who can do it, Paul. He's a good sprinter when he's in a small group, and let's not forget he finished 4th on the first stage of this race in a bunch sprint, albeit after the sprinters crashed out on the run-in in Corsica. Yeah,
well, that victory that he took last year on that stage, Phil, made him got him selected into the Olympic Games team for Great Britain, and every rider on the Olympic Games team for Great Britain had won a stage at the Tour de France.
Coming back together again. Now they know that we're no longer friends in this little group of 18, so we've got to watch everybody. Pavel Brut comes through with a bit of caution now, saying, if anybody sprints round me, I'm with you. Marcus Burkhardt takes Blel Kadri over to the right as we look at it. See, the coordination has gone now. Let's see what happens. Kadri is left to pick up the tempo. Jens Voigt decides to take it up with him, followed by Pavel Brut. Well, let me remind you about the Road ID pop quiz. By the way, for all the answers to the previous questions, go to roadid.com. Today the question is, who invented the first pedal-powered bicycle? And I can tell you it wasn't Bob Roll. Head on over to roadid.com/TDF to make your prediction and enter for daily prizes. The peloton now in this lead group is attacking one another. There are 2 small climbs to come in the last 15 kilometres of the day. We'll take a short break and rejoin him. Well, as he pushes on here now, is this going to be the one? He rides for the wild card team here, Sochazun. And at the moment, they're not organised behind. It's Viti on the front, looking across at Arthur Vichot, the champion of France. If we go to the back, it's Bakelants, who tried an attack going up the hill. It didn't work out. In fact, he got rid of his teammate, Jens Voigt. And it looks as though we might have a BMC rider just ahead, and if it was, it'll be TJ Van Garderen.
Well, he had the legs on the climb. He was the one that put the pressure on. Julien Simon is the rider who took advantage of those flurry of attacks, and now he's got himself about a 10 or 15 second advantage, but they're not going to let him ride on his own to the finish. That is TJ Van Garderen, 39.
Now, he was looking for the win today. I sensed it all of the time, and now he's just seen the Frenchman Simon dive away, and he fancies that. So he's trying to cause the reaction and reach him alone, but Viti on the front here is trying to bring it back together because his sprinter Rojas is just sitting and resting as long as he can. Wow, it looked like he almost overcooked that one.
He took a massive risk going around that little bit of traffic furniture there, but he still had the ability and the agility to keep it upright.
Wide roads now as we enter the suburbs of Lyon itself. There's still one more climb to come. TJ might reach him on this climb. It is still about 3.5 kilometers away, so he's not there yet. 3 kilometers now. It is for the top of the climb of the Croix-Rousse.
This is Trentin who's going for Omega Pharma Quick-Step, Matteo Trentin.
Yes, Trentin's now digging in his first Tour de France as he tries now to reach the two attackers.
Well, he's been pulled back there, and that's
Pavel Brut.
Pavel Brut from Katusha bringing them all back and bringing back TJ Van Garderen as well. So now back down to the lone leader off the front, Simon.
Yes, all looking at each other here. That's Viti looking around to see where his teammate is at the moment. Rojas, this is the leader. All France heading for what would be the first stage victory. It would be almost unthinkable that a Frenchman doesn't win a stage of the Tour de France in its 100th edition. This man will be a hero. He'll also be given, I would think, a much bigger contract on a World Tour team if he were to win today.
Rojas is the rider, I think, is the man who would not like to have this breakaway succeed. He's sitting in the first 4 or 5 positions. He wears number 129. Now's the time when this man, he's made the move now, but now he's got to get settled into a rhythm to hope he can hold on to a little bit of that advantage. He's now crossing the River Rhône.
Heading over the bridge here. Lonely ride now for him. He's got to hang on and hope here. He's only ever won 6 races in his life. He turned pro back in 2008, got his first crack at the Tour de France last year.
Lael Kadri's come out of that group now to try and get himself across this gap up to Simon. So one Frenchman chasing another.
Well, we can understand why the French want to win. The Côte de la Croix-Rousse, he's just about on it now. He's starting the climb. It's just under 2 kilometers now. It runs out over the top with 9.5 kilometers left to ride to the finish.
This is the final climb now. It's got 3 little bends in it as we come across the gap, where the first rider we'll pick up is Lael Kadri. He's riding across the gap to try and get himself up to Julien Simon, and it really is starting to hurt if you look at that face on him.
Oh, Kadri here, he's scoring well in the King of the Mountains. He's climbed up to 7th overall today with his escape. There are only points for the first rider over the top, and it's only 1 point anyway, but that's not the name of the game now. It is, can a Frenchman win a stage of the Tour de France? Just look at the French people here, loving the sight of a Frenchman up front. This is Kadri trying to reach another teammate, but a countryman. French cutting off his corner there. He wanted the inside. Reminder what's to come on Alpe d'Huez and Mont Ventoux tomorrow. Alpe d'Huez later, of course, next week.
Well, he's almost at the summit of this climb, which is only 1.5 kilometers long, but then over the top he's got 9 kilometers to go to the finish. That's just 6 miles of racing. The French have turned out to one of their bike races. This man, Frenchman Lael Kadri, and in the group behind, I wonder who's going to do the pacemaking, because Rojas, this is the main field.
Catching up with the 2 escapees, they've thrown the towel in Hoogerland, and breakaway versus the peloton. Actually, it's the break versus the breakaway now.
Simon. He's got 22 seconds advantage over Kadri, and I would say he's got about 30 seconds advantage over the peloton.
It'll be tough to hold on to this. 10 kilometers to go. He's not quite at the summit yet, but he is gaining just now.
Well, he's gaining just now, but I'm sure once they go over the top of this climb, they'll start to get themselves organised and chase down. You don't throw away a chance of winning a stage in the Tour de France like this. Lael Kadri is losing ground to Julien Simon. In fact, he's 25 seconds back, but he'll be egged on by seeing the referee's card just in front of him.
Massive, massive crowd here, enjoying, it says, to 10 kilometres to the finish. We almost couldn't see it because of the people watching the Tour here. So we're just about to go over the summit at 9.5 to go to the finish. Julien Simon gets 1 point and he doesn't care. He wants the first prize in Lyon. Here comes the peloton, led by TJ Van Garderen, as they drive back up to the back wheel of Blel Kadri.
Well, right on his wheel there is Arthur Vichot. And in fact, his uncle was Frédéric Vichot, who won a stage of the Tour de France, Phil, 29 years ago today.
24 seconds to Kadri, about half a minute to the rest of the breakaway. Is that enough? That's the question.
Well, Simon's not a bad rider. He won 5 races last year, including 2 stages of the Spanish race, the Volta Catalunya. He won the Tour of the Finistère and the Grand Prix of Wallonie down towards the end of the year. So they don't want to be giving him a 30-second advantage. That policewoman was just about in the wrong place there, and he had to change his line around the corner.
Looking at Julien Simon now, he's 6:40 ahead of the peloton. That's no longer the issue. He is about 30 seconds ahead of the group he's been with all day. He's just 9 kilometres from the finish. And let me remind you, the French have not won a stage of the 100th edition of the Tour until now. This is the 14th day. 27 seconds now.
Well, there were 2 Americans in this group, Andrew Talansky, who won a stage of Paris-Nice in the early part of this year, and TJ Van Garderen, who won the Amgen Tour of California. But one man leads from France. Julien Simon is holding on to a 25-second advantage over 15 riders who are now chasing him. And the main field are pretty much out of it at 6 minutes and 39 seconds back.
What a coup this would be, not just for France, but for the young man here, Julien Simon, in his second Tour, because he rides for a wild-card team here, not an automatic entry into the Tour de France.
Well, one man I feel is a big loser if this breakaway survives, and that's the Spanish rider, Jose Joaquim Rojas. He's sitting up always at the front of this group in 3rd or 4th position, hoping that it comes back together, because for me, he's the man with the fastest turn of speed at the finish line.
26 seconds, it's saying, on the computers now. So he's slowly being very painfully re-brought into the pack. But can they do it quick enough now? Right on the front there was Garcia of Cofidis. Every time he sees a little bit, senses a little bit of the pace dropping, he jumps out of the saddle. 18 seconds, and it's now Gautier on the front, and now through on the inside, and attacked by TJ Van Garderen.
Going again, but very quickly followed by the Cofidis rider as they pulling it back together.
Well, this time it's being chased by Garcia, I think, of Cofidis.
Well, actually, you might have noticed there, Phil, that one of the riders from BMC, and it was Marcus Burkhardt, he actually let the gap go going around that corner when he saw TJ Van Garderen go into it in first place.
That's to ease his mate away. There is the gap. They've got Gautier, they've got Garcia, and leading the pace is TJ Van Garderen.
But bringing them back together is Trontin from Omega Pharma Quickstep, followed by Arthur Vichot, the French national champion. Fast descent now into the heart of Lyon with just 7 kilometres to go to the finish. This man is not hanging around here this afternoon. Might be a good time to remind you, Phil, that Soja-Sun have been to the Tour de France on a number of occasions before and have never yet won a stage.
But we've always talked to them in the past of being in breakaways, but you're right, they haven't won a stage. He's been away now for 7 kilometres. He's got 7 kilometres to go as we sweep over the beautiful river here.
That corresponds to about 8 minutes of effort after a long day in the saddle. TJ Van Garderen is very keen to chase at the front of that group to try and pull it all back together. This man's advantage now is down to 15 seconds, and 15 seconds is 250 metres.
Saturday evening, early evening in Lyon, and the Tour de France hits town. The crowd have turned out on a beautiful summer's afternoon as well. And there's nobody giving up here. They still want to continue with this. Simon Geschke is the rider on the front. He won the first climb of the day when the breakaway was getting established.
They're not going to catch him if they make these flurries of attacks one after the other. To catch him, they need to work together and take turns at the front of that group to keep their impetus nice and high. what happens when those attacks come and then slow down is it takes the general average speed of that group down a fraction, and you see they're not eating into his advantage very quickly. It's still 13 seconds.
Albacini, and that looks like Lars Bak on the left of our picture. He's pushing on now as Bak pushes in an attack. Pavel Brut looking for the opportune win, as he always does, takes Lars Bak, dare I say back wheel, as we're now looking back up the front with Simon.
Well, look how far down he is in the overall standings, an hour and 26 minutes, but that doesn't matter.
Can you imagine the pain now this kid's going through?
You know, when you're in a situation like this and you think you might be able to win a stage of the Tour de France, you can push that pain barrier just a little bit further, and he now knows he's got 11 seconds advantage. Talansky there, the young American, 24 years of age, riding alongside TJ Van Garderen, the two youngsters, the hope of the future for American cycling.
Still gaining an awful lot of his 13-minute overnight deficit. He's still gaining 6:41 at the moment. He's going to be looking at a big move up the overall classification. If this gap stays in, there's a
Van
move
Garderen again.
Van Garderen followed this time by Belal Kadri.
Now, will they chase? He's just getting to the psychological moment now. Rojas is coming across the top. Rojas has seen that as being a very dangerous move by the American, and he wants to be with them.
5 kilometres to go. The sprinters realise that they're not going down for a sprint finish. He's going to have to go with a group and hope it reaches Julian Simon. They're at 3 miles or 5 kilometres from the finish.
Well, they haven't quite made the junction, and once Rojas knew he hadn't got clear from that group, he sat up, and they haven't got across to Van Garderen and Belal Kadri. But still, Simon leads, and it's actually up to 18 seconds. He's looking over his shoulder. He shouldn't do that right now. Just look ahead. Concentrate on the job in hand.
And what an incredible feat by the city of Lyon to bring this race across some 6 miles of a city which is so often clogged with traffic, all shut down for the passage of the Tour de France, as Van Garderen still pushes on with Kadri.
Well, Van Garderen in the red jersey, but they're clawing their way to his back wheel there, and now it's all back together once again.
Well, they're counter-attacking, then they attack, then they slow. This man sticks to his guns and tries to keep a steady pace and hope. Little shy look over his shoulder there to see what he's doing. 4.2 kilometres to go. They've slowed again.
Well, you can just see the Soja Sun rider in the distance. It's around about 2, and TJ Van Garderen is going again, and Talansky is right onto his wheel.
Well, they're on rival teams, so they're not helping each other, that's for sure, as we go back up with the French leader, pulled on by the fact it's the eve of Bastille Day, and no Frenchman has won a stage of the Tour de France this year. Surely you don't need better incentives than that.
The impetus in that group now is starting to slow, and again it's Marcus Burkhardt going over the top. He feels that the time is right for him to have a go. He's a teammate of Van Garderen.
Yes, and this time the French champion has gone with Lars Bak to try, and they've got him too, and they've slowed down again. This man just gets on with the job.
All of the time he rides at the same tempo. He's probably riding through the streets of the town here at 27, 28 miles an hour as he gets out to the saddle. Every time there's a little rise in the field, he tries to keep the momentum going as hard as possible. 17 seconds. Van Garderen now has been left behind by that group because of the long attacks that he did.
Well, he gave it his all, and now he's been tailed off, and it's left to Lars Bak, to his teammate Marcus Burkhardt there to do anything now for BMC. 3 kilometres to go for the leader. He is just under the banner, and we've got an attack by Bak again.
Lars Bak hit them again. They all want to try and scuttle across this gap if they can on their own. They don't want to take anybody else with them. It's a long, hard ride now for Lars Bak to try and catch this rider, Julien Simon. He won 5 races last year, and they were very good races at that. 2 stages of the Volta Catalunya. And he really is finding his legs burning now, but that sensation is much more acceptable. It's Bakelants coming across the gap now to Lars Bak, and on his wheel, you've got Gauthier.
Well, we'll see now if they come back together under this pressure here. Lars Bak has become very, very active. He's never won a stage of the Tour. It's his 3rd Tour. As Julien Simon, he's never won a stage either, but it could be a big day today for him. Saturday afternoon in the city of Lyon. This man is going faster than you will ever drive down this road once the roads are open to traffic. And he's free to fly at the moment. He's hanging on.
Well, he's still holding on to about a 200-metre advantage as he comes. He must be egged on by this crowd. The crowd are phenomenal round as he comes up to the 2 kilometre to go board.
There it is, 2 kilometres, just over 1.5 miles to the finishing line. Can he hold on in there? Julien Simon, I think the whole of France will be shouting now at their television set as the counter-attack has started again. This time it's Cyril Gauthier, another Frenchman on the front, but in the distance, who is that?
That is the leader of this race, Julien Simon. Look at his shoulders now, Phil. They are starting to rock. Marcus Burkhardt has hit them very hard. He's the teammate of TJ Van Garderen, the American, who in fact has been left behind by this group. He's down to 7 seconds. This man now is starting to feel the pain. It's accumulated pain. He's got about 100 metres advantage. The big rider from BMC is coming across this gap.
And is he coming across? He's coming across at like a train here. Well, it's not usually the peloton picking up the breakaway. Now it's the breakaway picking up the lone leader right on the 1 kilometre to go banner.
There is Michael Albacini now, makes the junction with the BMC rider. They've got to keep going. They've just about got onto the wheel of the rider from Soja-Son. Albacini knows that. He knows he's got to keep going at this moment.
Huge last-minute desperate efforts to catch Julien Simon, and Albacini is first across at the 1 kilometre to go, but the rest are clawing their way across. They are totally committed. They cannot wait. Albacini would not like to go now. He's absolutely no choice.
Well, he's got to keep the pressure on because Getschke's coming across from Argos Shimano. He will ride like this up until about 300 or 400 metres to go. Then he'll try and force the Frenchman to come to the front.
Well, as you see when you get the front shot, it would have been a sprinter's delight finishing in Lyon. And now it might well be a sprinter because Rochas is still in that group here. As we've seen now, Geschke on the front here, followed by Albacini, followed by Julien Simon, Marcus Burkhardt and Bakelants looking over and checking. Bakelants is the danger.
This is a long straight road and he's got them. He's just jumping out of the saddle. Albacini's seen that as a dangerous time to move and he gets right up into second position as the Belgian starts to lead out.
200 metres to the line. Jan Bakelants, who won stage 2 of this race and got yellow, is in the mix again, but Albacini's gone now as they go up to the 150 mark. Albacini goes, chased by Simon Geschke in the white jersey, and Rochas grits his teeth on the right. He's the sprinter. Rochas trying to get through with Matteo Trentin on the line. It is going to be Trentin who takes it, the newcomer, and making up for what Mark Cavendish couldn't do because Trentin is on the same team as Cavendish.
And look how far back he comes from, Phil. He was in about 8th or 9th position. Now, Andrew Talansky saw that too late and jumped onto the wheel of the Italian. At this moment, it looks as if Albacini's got it all sewn up, but the speed of Matteo Trentin as he comes to the line gives him the victory there by a good bicycle wheel length.
And I think Talansky's going to be seen on the photo in 3rd place here. What a finish for the young American Andrew Talansky in his 3rd tour, and is also going to make big gains in the overall on his first tour. I beg your pardon, saying 3rd place in his first tour, and he's going to make big gains overall.
And Rochas making another top 10 finish in 4th place.
I can't tell you how many times he's been called in 2nd place when he's been wearing the green jersey as well. He does not believe it, but where did he find that kick from?
He came, that was, if you like, Phil, it's a hard thing to say, but that was actually a slowish sprint. And if you've got a little bit of a kick, you can come from a long way back, and that's exactly what he did.
Meanwhile, the main field are still to finish.
Matteo, una grande gioia, Matteo.
With him?
TJ Van Garderen finished stretching out his back. He gave it all of his best shots today, and in the end, he didn't hit it right. But he did well for Boulder, Colorado, as he crosses the line. And about 18th. He won't quite be last, actually, because I think David Miller's still behind, but that's an immaterial anyway. We're going back out to the field now. Talansky finished in a flurry there and got 3rd on the line. Terrific ride for him in his first Tour de France, showing that he is a man for the future in this race because he can climb. And so he moves up tonight on the eve of the longest stage of the race tomorrow, as Ian Stannard, the British rider, brings to the group here at 4 kilometres to go. So they've maintained all of the gains here. So Talansky is going to find he's pulled back around about 7 minutes of his lost time of 13. He's the big man to gain time in that breakaway. The rest were racing for the stage win. It would have been a matter of another 50 metres further. Talansky might have been the stage winner today. Here's the new team leaders on the team. That won't be affected today. Saxo Tinkoff coming in. At least I don't think it will. It may may be affected by the Movistar team with 2 riders up front and such a big gap. We'll just take a break and then we'll come back for the prizes and the arrival of the bunch. Just here, the top 5 remain the same with the same time gaps as we now take up our rendezvous with Mont Ventoux tomorrow. Might be some changes then. A bit further down, top 10 remain also unchanged, all finishing together. We want to see just how Quintana will climb Mont Ventoux. He's in 8th place there, and the white jersey just ahead of him in Kwiatkowski. So it'll be just a little bit further down. We haven't got the position yet of Talansky, but I think he's now 14th overall. So just watching here the finish once more of the Amigo Pharma Lotto rider. He burst right through from the back to the front, and he just held on to the line first, only just.
Absolute heavyweight championship slugfest on Mont Ventoux. Right now we check in with 2 of the very best in the business. They've never been dropped on a climb, Phil Liggett and Paul Sherwin.
We're dropped every time we ever ride up a hilltop, but today it's all about time, gain and loss, as the leads of the Tour must fight on Mont Ventoux, and they are flying. We've had the fastest hours racing any stage of the Tour. They've done more than 50 kilometres in 1 hour racing. Let's have a look at the Geico map, Paul. We've gone through all of the small hills so far, but of course the big brute is at the end.
That's what this stage is all about. It's a very, very long stage at 242 kilometres. That's 150 miles of racing, leaving Givors behind. A few small climbs in the early part of the race, but that's not anything that these guys will be worried about at all. I think the toughest thing is, Phil, throughout the whole of the last 100 kilometres or so of this race, you look across to your side and you will always see in the distance Mont Ventoux. It sticks up in the Provence region here, and you can see it from miles and miles around. Yeah. There's the profile. Fast and furious out of the gun, over 50 miles covered in the first 2 hours of the race, and then it's all about that final climb of the day. That's when the time gaps will become very, very big.
Yes, so the lead is a small group. Peter Sagan is in there, and the green jersey sprint is just ahead of him. So that's a shrewd move, but of course the real battle starts amongst the boys in the peloton when they hit Mont Ventoux. Just 50 miles to go.
We will hand it off to Phil and Paul after our next break for live coverage here on NBCSN as we take a look at the current leaders in that breakaway. Sagan being up there, Bob, does that send off any alarms to the rest of the field?
Well, the sprinters will be alarmed. Yeah. They won't get any points unless it's 9 and after. And Sagan, it should be a formality to get the sprint points here. That's what makes him so dangerous in the green jersey competition. He can go in the breakaways and be up there in the sprints as well.
To keep up with the Tour de France, you need the most advanced digital experience of its kind. Now for a limited...
Tins are now with us. We begin in the beautiful province of Provence today. 151 miles. It's the longest stage of the Tour as well. Let's start as always with checking in on Palmer's Cocoa Butter Formula for Men weather report. 80 degrees, that's down in the valleys today. It gets cooler as they climb. Light winds. Forecast is sunny, but up on the finishing line, cloud is blowing in. The men who set the pace today, there were 10, there are now 9 of them. Here are the names, Paul. And in this is Peter Sagan. What a shrewd thinker he is.
You've got to take your hat off to Peter Sagan. That's him in the green jersey there. He leads the green jersey points competition. He's joined in this breakaway by Merkel Irizar of Radio Shack, Peric Federigo, Jeremy Waugh, Christophe Reblon, Alberto Losada, Sylvain Chavanel, Daryl Impey, the South African, and Walter Poels. And, you know, when we look at what we've covered so far, it's gone at an unbelievable speed. We've been covering 31 miles an hour average speed, Phil, for the first 2 hours of the race.
Movistar taking an interest at the front of the peloton for the first time now. It's been all Europe car back there. Yes, you're absolutely right, Paul. We did 30 miles in the first hour of racing today. We did 31.5 miles in the second hour of racing, the fastest since the Tour started in Corsica. And we've done 26 miles an hour in the third hour as we head towards the top of the mountain. And so we are, in consequence, 30 minutes ahead of fastest expected time. Let's quickly have a look at our Cadillac performance predictions then and see how we're all going on the 2 commentary teams. So we're still going through the undulations here of the area around Vaucluse as we head towards the mountain. So we're going to take a few more commercial breaks early so we can show you a lot more as the riders get to the steep slopes of Mont Ventoux. That is a live shot of the top of the mountain. The people are lined on this mountain 3 deep for 20 kilometers. As we go back down to the leaders here, Sylvain Chavanel at the back of the lead group just at the moment. As they try to steal a march, they're being held just now. The advantage, 3 minutes 39 is the current one. His career Tour de France stage wins among the leaders. Sagan's had 4, Fedrigo's had 4, Chavanel's had 3. Christophe Riblon's good climbers had 1 stage win. They're the 4 men. And there is Sylvain Chavanel, 5 times the French time trial champion, which is also a record. Peloton being strung out over 400 yards here. Well, Movistar have laid whatever plan they have very early today, Paul. They've taken control at the head of the peloton. We have no more climbs officially until we start Ventoux, but as you know, they're up and down all day long here.
Yeah, but we're starting to get into the foothills of the Mont Ventoux, if you like, and although it doesn't really reflect that much on the profile, it is very, very difficult before you actually get to the bottom of the Mont Ventoux, and then you see the banner which indicates 21 kilometers or almost 13 miles of climbing before you get to the summit.
Well, that shot we saw earlier of Alberto Contador at the back of the race, apparently he dropped off and he changed his bike. Took a new bike. Now, I wonder if that's significant. Maybe a different set of gears on it. I don't think he had a problem.
Maybe a lighter machine as well,
yeah,
for the final climb of the day. Now, the reason they're riding like this is I believe that Movistar have got a lot of faith in their Colombian climber, Nairo Quintana. He's just 23 years of age. He will know by now whether he's going to have good legs for the day and whether his legs will be good when he comes to the Mont Ventoux. But Movistar don't want a long breakaway to steal the glory of the Mont Ventoux away. They want this stage victory here this afternoon. In the past, we have seen a couple of breakaways succeed and survive to the finish of Mont Ventoux, especially when Richard Virenque won a couple of years ago and when Manuel Garate won the last time we came here. But this, I think, today they want a big showdown on a big day because it's Bastille Day, French's big holiday.
They need a stage win as well.
15 kilometers, the leaders have covered it in 20 minutes and 18 seconds, while the main field have eaten in a bit of their advantage. They've covered it in 19:59. The difference in the speeds between the two groups, 27.5 miles an hour for the leaders and 27.9 miles an hour for the main field. In the wattage, well, you can see the main peloton are developing a much bigger wattage than the breakaway group.
Our helicopter spinning around the Randon Tower here, which is the symbol of the city of Nyon, built around 1280 by the Baron of Montauban. So, as we just look down on that beautiful city of Nyon, we're going to take another break because we want you to see as much as we can of the final 20 kilometers on Mont Ventoux itself. Looking here at Entrechaux, these rocky shelters outcropped all over Provence. Provided shelters going way back in time. The race is unchanged. We've still got those 9 leaders. They're not far away from the green jersey sprint, as the peloton here riding approximately 3 kilometers behind, not closing in at all at the moment, still being dominated by Movistar. Far right is Chris Froome in his yellow jersey, the leader of the Tour de France. Andy Schleck's Radio Shack team moving up on the left as we go back up to the leaders, and 1,000 meters to go. To the sprint. Andre Greipel is going to miss out today. He'll try to clean up from the rest. There are some places left in the peloton, but there are 9 up here. And maximum points for Sagan on the right. He's looking across saying, "You're going to challenge me or not?" Went to the front, Peter Sagan. He gave the eye to all the riders to let him know, yes, I'm in the breakaway, and in 600 meters time, the 20 points are reserved for me.
I wonder if Sylvain Chavanel will try and challenge Peter Sagan, because he's a teammate of Mark Cavendish. But, you know, this man is so versatile. The rider sitting in the back there wearing number 11. He's capable of going into the breakaway. He won in the early part of this year a very, very good one-day race called the Ghent-Wevelgem. It's a one-day classic in Belgium. And everybody expected him to wait to try and win the race in the sprint, because he was the fastest rider in the sprint. And he said, no way. He took off and won it on his own and then pulled a wheelie as he was crossing the finish line.
He's an absolute character. He's 400 meters from it now. He's going to stalk up the outside. I don't think anybody dare take him on in the sprint. Indeed, if they did. Chavanel is taking his wheel, conserving points perhaps for Cavendish, but if he tries to outsprint Peter Sagan, he might get a shock.
It might be interesting, but he's sitting right on his wheel. Sagan waiting for the last moment. You know what? I think Sylvain Chavanel might well just have a little crack at this, Phil.
He's got plenty of supporters here, and of course he would take the points away from it. Would only be 1 point, but he's not going to do that.
No.
As he hits the line, 20 points for Peter Sagan. When we look back in a week's time at the finish of the Tour de France, you might find that gave him the unassailable lead. He's there on the lower last 5 kilometres, briefly, of Mont Ventoux. The leaders are still clear, but the race behind now being animated by Sky. Well, as we start to look around the peloton, Paul, clearly now they are on the climb, but this is not the climb of Ventoux. There will be a descent into the town of Bédoin before we hit the slopes of Mont Ventoux itself.
Yeah, so they'll have a slight downhill, Phil, and I think what you'll then see is we'll line ourselves up for the 21 kilometre to go sign at the side of the road, and psychologically, if you're not a climber, that's not a lot of fun.
Cavendish here knows the inevitable is going to happen sooner or later, so why not make it sooner? This is a false little climb before we descend again, but already the speed set by Sky has split the field up. Those boys are going back into what we call the autobus. This is Ryder Hesjedal, the Canadian who has a cracked rib and he's had a very painful tour, letting go very early on the climb today.
Yes, I think a lot of guys here, Phil, are just going to take a little bit of a back seat.
Well, just sitting up there, it looks like it's Jack Bauer, the Canadian, in the blue jersey of Garmin Sharp. He's also going back in his first Tour de France. There's the flag for Canada on the right.
Phil, I don't suppose this would be the right time to tell these guys going off the bat that we haven't actually started the final climb of the day. This is just the hors d'oeuvre.
This is. There will actually be a short descent into Bédoin, but Sky have decided to stamp the rhythm out and thin the peloton out, and it is working. Well, if you had a look over the top of the Sky boys there, you would see the peloton has been greatly reduced with this effort by Team Sky. We'll continue into the town of Bédoin. We'll take another short break. See you in a moment. Well, as we continue, it's 1 minute 20 now, and there's a change of leadership at the front of the pace as we look at the pictures here now. We've got Sky has started dropping the men, but the yellow jersey of Chris Froome still has Richie Porte around him, and I think also Peter Kenyuk. Interesting to see that Philippe Gilbert is still in this group. Cadel Evans is still there, but they've lost the services of TJ Van Garderen. He has been dropped.
Well, they're putting serious pressure on this race once again. That was Jan Bakeland going away there from the Belgian on the Radio Shack squad, but you can see the damage that's being done at the rear end of the field.
And the big challenge of the day is for our cameras to show us where everybody is with this crowd on the road here. There's not much road left for racing on. Just looking down on the track here at the moment. This is Rui Costa, just gone through picture. Pacemaking being set now by, it looks like, Tony Martin on the front just at the moment. The time trialist doing what he can.
Well, he's doing that for his own teammate there, because sitting right on his wheel was Michael Kwiatkowski. He's the leader of the Best Young Rider competition, but just 34 seconds ahead of Nairo Quintana.
And this is the back jersey here of Sylvain Chavanel as he pumps the pedal. He's still ahead of all the chaos behind. This is Irizar and Riblon. They're the next two riders on the climb. Remember, they're from the original breakaway. Now, looking down, number 1, Christopher Froome now, and is going to be challenged. Number 121 is Alejandro Valverde, the man that had the bad luck. He sits behind Froome at the moment.
But behind him was number 91, and that's Alberto Contador. This group is really getting slimmed out as we get through the tree line, as we start to continue forward.
Well, Irizar is sat up here. 107, was it? No, this is somebody.
This is Bakeland.
I take my hat off to Jan Bakeland doing a ride like this. At the moment, he's giving it a little go. Calm before the storm, though, I think. 68 seconds. Gone back to 105 as we talk. The gap is consistently changing here. This is on the steep section now. 49 is Jaime Zubeldia.
Well, slipping away there was Ruben Platzer. Also, Movistar, let's not forget, have done an awful lot. That was Tony Martin just going back.
Legs locked completely there on the climb.
Well, Movistar have sacrificed themselves, Phil, throughout the early part of this race to make sure that that breakaway didn't get too far off the front end of the main field. All they can do now is hope to survive. 2:01.
Wout Poels, he was in the breakaway, he's gone. Here's Voigtler, he's coming forward, or hopes to be. He's going as well now.
He's just taking his radio earpiece out there, doesn't want to hear any more of the bad news that's going on.
Meanwhile, swinging up to just ahead of that breakaway, this is Jan Bakelants, the man that made a name for himself on day 2 of the Tour.
Oh la la, Andy Schleck has just gone out of the back. Look at this.
Schleck has cracked big time, and he was hoping to go up with the top 20 today.
Well, it just gives you an indication of what sort of pressure is being applied to the front end of that group. And I tell you, when the lights go out on a climb like this, it's very, very difficult to get yourself moving again.
Very, very difficult. Andy Schleck into the cobbles there, and in all sorts of trouble, and there's still an awful long way to go to the summit. 14 kilometres to climb to the end of this stage.
Well, this is quite interesting because Riblon has been dropped, and now we've got Bakelants and Irizar together going up this slope. I have to say that Jan Bakelants is a phenomenal find this year in the Tour de France. That's Bakelants in second place.
Yeah, and this I think might have been a plan, because Irizar was expecting Bakelants to join him here. Now this is the leader on the road at the moment. We're on possibly the steepest climb. It gets a little bit steeper towards the finish. Over 10% the gradient now. Peter Velits now setting the tempo on the front with Kwiatkowski.
Still got 2 teammates alongside him, number 3 Peter Kenya and then number 6 Richie Porte. Chris Froome just sitting, he's on the defensive for the moment. Now there's another move coming from Euskaltel.
Now Euskaltel, Euskadi, they won't be marked riders just for the moment. If he's got a little bit of a move here. This time it looks as though the peloton are getting control under the tempo of Peter Velits on Omega Pharma Quickstep, trying to keep their young rider in that white jersey.
Well, Andrew Talansky's in this group somewhere. We've heard his number mentioned over race radio. Peter Velits is doing a phenomenal job at the front, while still Sylvain Chavanel holds on to around about a 55 seconds advantage over the front end of the main field. He's not going to survive, but I tell you what, he'll get a lot of column lengths in the newspaper tomorrow.
Well, this is Jan Bakelants, but this Spanish rider coming up behind here on the Euskaltel Euskadi team, and I would expect it's possibly Oroz or one of the Izagirre brothers. As we swing back to the back, it's goodbye to Christophe Riblon now. He was in the breakaway, also Irizar. They're both in the breakaway, straight through this elite pack. Out of the back now, also Daryl Impey here.
Simon Clark.
Oh, I beg your pardon, Simon Clark, yes. A bit surprised to see Simon, the first Australian to win the King of the Mountains last year in the Vuelta España.
Well, Cadel Evans moving up, number 31. There you can see number 91, Alberto Contador, sitting on the wheel of the yellow jersey, just waiting for a moment to move.
It's Dan Martin also riding just a little bit off the pace of the yellow jersey, but on another good ride. He won the second day of the Pyrenees, remember.
Let's not forget the young Irishman is in 11th place in the overall standings, looking for 5:52, and a lot of those riders only separated by mere seconds.
Still all the cheers for a Frenchman on Bastille Day. Look how low his gears are now for Sylvain Chavanel.
This is a phenomenal performance here by Bakelants. It's at Nieve. He was a rider who rode exceptionally well throughout the Pyrenean stages. He's a youngster on the way up. First Tour de France for him.
Well, he won't be a marked man just at the moment as he continues up this climb.
Well, he has the lone leader has a 26 seconds advantage over Mikel Nieve. And in fact, they're opening up around about a 30-second advantage over the yellow jersey group.
16 minutes 50 seconds down, Nieve, as he starts his attack to recoup a little bit of his lost time. But you know, over the next week, if he rides well in these mountains, he could have a nice climb up the overall classification. But to take my hat off to Sylvain Chavanel here. Great time trialist, great workhorse, trying to win on his birthday in the opening week of the Tour, setting the tempo up Mont Ventoux today.
Well, there's 12 kilometres to go to the summit. That's still going to take them, Phil, close to 35 or 40 minutes of climbing still left to go. And we haven't yet gone out of the tree line. Here's Quintana. This is the move.
Now look at the look round. Velich looks round to see is anybody going to counter this move, because now we've got Nairo Quintana. Quintana's made his move. He's gone a long way from the summit, Paul.
And there is absolutely no response in the main field. This guy has got an incredible tempo on the climbs. He comes, as I said, from the region of Boyacá in Colombia. He was born at the altitude of 3,000 meters or 10,000 feet, and he has no fear of climbs like this. Sylvain Chavanel's been caught.
He's been passed by Nieva here, and Jan Bakelants is struggling. In fact, he can't hold Mikel Nieva. Now let's see if Quintana can cross this gap. They obviously just couldn't react to that because they saw him make the move and he's gone early.
Well, Phil, the question is not let's see if he can get across the gap, it's how quickly is he going to get across the gap, because this youngster at 23 years of age, I think, is the next climbing star of the future.
He's looking for 5 minutes and 18 seconds to become the next leader of the Tour de France. Just watching Garcia drop off the back now. It's Philippe Gilbert, the world champion, but he's not a great climber up these hills. Also losing ground. He's lasted quite well, I think, on the climb today.
Yes, but they'll all be wondering how fast is Nairo Quintana going to be coming across the gap. This is a very, very difficult climb. There's still 40 minutes of climbing, I estimate, to go till we get up towards the finishing line. There is Quintana in the distance, just catching and passing Sylvain Chavanel, and he doesn't even look as if he's breathing.
His face never gives any impression of how his body feels. He just sits there and pedals. He is a peddler of charm, that's for sure. As he continues to cut through the riders ahead, he's very short. He's got to cause concern. Little bit of a gamble being done by everybody else now.
Well, the thing on board Team Sky now, Phil, is do not panic, because if you panic, you push yourself into the red zone and you can't recover. It's no point trying to chase down Nairo Quintana. He's such an incredibly talented climber. The best thing, I think, for Team Sky in the yellow jersey to do is limit his losses.
Well, in the Pyrenees, of course, Quintana did the same, but he went to mountain too soon. And Chris Froome reached him and got rid of him and won on his own. Now this finishes right on the top. There's no more mountains today. As we watch here, Mikel Nieva. Keep your eye over his shoulder. You'll see the black shadow coming through. There he is, ploughing through the motorbikes.
Well, he's looking to write his name into the history books here with a win at the top of this legendary climb. He looks so easy and so comfortable on that machine of his. He's sat very high up. That's the way climbers very often do. They don't get down into a low-profile position.
Chavanel's cracked. Peter Kenyuk pacing Port, and then the yellow jersey. 3 skies against a flying Colombian.
Sitting behind the yellow jersey is Alejandro Valverde. He lost himself 10 minutes in one stage and plummeted from 2nd overall down to 17th place overall. He is so happy with this situation, and they could be turning the books around. I'm not sure that Quintana can take back 5 minutes on a stage like this, but who knows when we get up to the top of this climb.
He's left the space to do it, Paul. 7 miles and 12 kilometres to climb. There he is. He's now through the field. He's now blazing the trail here up Mont Ventoux. We turn into the barren landscapes with about 5 kilometres to climb. It's going to be tough now to get to the finish line for Chavanel.
Well, that's a shock there, going backwards. Igor Anton. Alberto Contador is ensconced in that group. He's sitting right on the wheel of the yellow jersey, just on the far side. Where's number 91? He's having a look at the man in front of him, number 1. Chris Froome, to see if he can see any signs of weakness, and if he does, he'll take advantage of it.
I think Contour and Kreuziger are waiting for their moment to hit Chris Froome here. They're waiting for it to be nearer the finishing line when we break out onto the moon surface itself. He's just watching and waiting, but they're all taking a calculated gamble here. They clearly can't match the acceleration of this rider Quintana in his first Tour de France, but he came here with a big reputation, as he's now 11.5 kilometres from the summit. Very shortly we'll be up towards Chaly-Reynard, which in the early months they have sometimes a race up here. Paris-Nice, Chaly-Reynard, as far as you can get up before you have to go down the other side, because the snow line starts there. The road isn't used in the winter.
Well, there's 15 seconds gap now between Mikel Nieve, who leads this race for Euskaltel Euskadi, and the second man on the road now, Nairo Quintana.
He's going to get 5 minutes today, but maybe starting a week of getting the lead away from Chris Froome. We'll find out if he's gone too early, Paul. The mistake was most certainly what he made in the Pyrenees.
Yeah, but the Pyrenean attack was slightly different. I think that was a bit of youthful enthusiasm on that occasion. He attacked 2 climbs from the finish. This kind of rider, this kind of climber, he's got the energy to sustain this kind of rhythm on one single climb, and that's what he's done now. And he's looking at about 10 or 11 kilometers to lead this race. And if he wants to pull back a big chunk of time, you have to attack further away from the finish, because if you wait until you get close to the finish, you're only going to grapple 15, 20, 30 seconds. This guy's looking for 5 whole minutes.
Well, Cadel Evans is being nursed along here by Steve Morabito, his teammate, just trying to keep him in touch with this extremely select group of riders here on the peloton. Andrew Talansky, the American who shot up the overall standings yesterday with a 3rd place finish, just the last man of this yellow jersey bunch. Just coming back towards the peloton now, Jan Bekelants. He's had a tremendous Tour de France.
Well, he's a big revelation, and I would think there's a number of teams knocking on the door at Radio Shack to try and sign him up for next season. 2 days in the yellow jersey. And, of course, only one professional stage victory to his credit, Phil, and that was a stage in the Tour de France, and it was this year.
Yes, it was. It earned him a yellow jersey. Well, Contador, very typical of him now. He's waiting for an acceleration when he feels the time is right. Just trying to move on the outside of Chris Froome. I think he got pushed out a bit there.
It's very, very difficult to judge how Chris Froome is holding himself in the race. He never really looks all that comfortable on the bike. He's a very tall rider, but I did notice he was turning a very low gear, so that's a good sign.
Continuing up the climb there, 10 kilometers to go for Quintana. Bekelants has just gone back into the group. This is a good time not to panic for Team Sky. At the moment, there's only one man up the road they're worried about. He is not that far ahead, less than 40 seconds, in fact. So there's no reason to panic yet. They should be more concerned about, can Contador attack? Can Alejandro Valverde try to join his teammate up front? And what about the 2 Dutch riders? We haven't seen anything of them yet.
Everybody's just waiting until we get into the really wide open area outside of the tree line when we're racing through what the French like to call Les Caillas, or the rocky section.
Under the 10 kilometers to go, Bekelants safely back in the pack as they snatch their food bags at 10 kilometers to go. That's interesting, and I'm not sure that's legal.
Well, theoretically it's not, but they've been doing it on a number of occasions throughout the race. Not only Team Sky, but other teams I've noticed have been taking on board drinks and food over the tops of plenty of the climbs. There, it's done. It's important to keep everything on board.
I think you'll find fines for the Team Sky tomorrow for that, because the rule is quite clear. You can't feed going up climbs, and you can't feed in the last 20 kilometers of the day. So they'll get themselves a fine tonight. I don't think it will include a time infraction, but you never know. Anyway, the race goes on, and as they come up here, they pick up Jan Bekelants, but they can't quite get up alongside him yet. There's the pictures again, as we see the riders snatching food bags. That's clearly a premeditated move. That was a team official.
What they call marginal differences. They look for every little bit of advantage they can find anywhere. Peter Kenyuk has slimmed down 3 or 4 kilos, which is 6 to 8 pounds, since the Criterium du Dauphiné, to be ready for the Tour de France, to be able to get himself up the climbs. Nieve, by the way, sitting in 2nd position. He's a 29-year-old from Lecce in the northern part of Spain. He's a Basque. He finished 10th overall in the Giro d'Italia last year and the year before that. So he's obviously a very, very good climber and a consistent rider.
And he just passed the Basque flags there as well for some inspiration. There is the barren landscape now. We're breaking out at Chalet Reynard onto the moon as we race up towards the final climb. It's 5 kilometers in open space there. And still it's Nieve and Quintana riding. 2 first-timers in the Tour de France, showing everybody how to climb a mountain. It's Nieve of Euskadi at the back, and this little flyer from Colombia, Quintana. Richie Porte is trying to just make this pace hard enough to stop anybody going up to join them. Contador sitting on the wheel of Froome. You just get that impression he's waiting to have a go. And is Valverde cracking here, because the gap has opened up.
Also starting to crack just ahead of Alejandro Valverde was number 101, and that is Joaquim Rodriguez.
Well done to the pace-making of Porte, because he's hit at Valverde. Now, Valverde's not the threat he was. He was second until that broken wheel a couple of days ago. He's no longer a threat, but it's a good sign that Porte is setting a great pace.
The turquoise jersey there is Jakob Fuglsang. He also is going off the back end of this group. We're having a serious distillery here, because we're now down to just 4 riders.
Kreuziger and Contador of Saxo Tinkoff, and the other 2 are Porte and Froome. Well, actually, this is looking rather good for Chris Froome just now, thanks to the selfless working of his friend and his partner in Richie Porte.
Well, just 2 riders left with the Sky Train there, and it looks a little bit as if Contador's cracking now. Contador has gone off the back, and Roman Kreuziger is the rider to remain there. Oh, it's
Kreuziger who's gone. Contador's hanging on, but they were only separated by 3 seconds, those 2 riders overall. A little bit surprised to see Kreuziger go. That says just how quick Richie Porte is going. He looks over his shoulder and thinks, crikey, everybody's gone.
Yes, but look at the gap to the 2 leaders now. It's suddenly come down to 31 seconds because of the pacemaking of Richie Porte.
Well, take your hat off to Porte. The team has done a great job here now. Kreuziger swings across. He's looking for help here, because Laurens ten Dam and Bout Mollema are here. The riders in 2nd and 5th place overall. And that is significant. 164 is Mollema, and he could be losing his 2nd place. Contador is moving up behind Chris Froome in the overall tonight right now.
Look at the different climbing styles. Contador preferring to climb very often out of the saddle, dancing on the pedals the way he does. But this man now is on his own. He is now... No, he hasn't.
No, I thought he'd gone away there too.
Well, that was a little kick and just opened up a length or so. We're still looking at 7.8 kilometres to go, and Richie Porte has pulled that gap down to about 15 seconds.
He knows what he's done. He knows the damage he's done. He looks over his shoulder and just suffers a bit more. And he's only got Contador left now. That is incredible bike riding by Porte, and he really has done Chris Froome a favour now. Well, as we watch here, the man carrying the hog there, we are seeing this rider break away. He's free to fly now on his way to the top. First Tour de France, never won a stage. He's certainly going to be in the white jersey of best young rider, but can he get the gap? Because look at the pacemaking by Porte. He's back to 15 seconds.
Yeah, but look at this group. They haven't laid down arms either yet. It's now Joaquim Rodriguez on the front in that red and white jersey and wearing number 101. These guys are very much on the back foot. Number 81 is Jean-Christophe Perrault. He's the best placed French rider in the group, and he's holding his place in the overall standings by staying with these guys.
He's the only French rider in the group, and he will continue to be the best French rider in the Tour de France. This is Fuglsang, dreaming of a high finish. This is Rodriguez, who was once tipping himself to be a podium finisher in Paris. This is now Porte has gone, Froome has attacked, and Contador's got to hold on. Look at the revving of Froome. Now this is what happened in the Pyrenees, and he picked up Quintana and he blew him away.
He has blown away.
He's gone.
Contador has gone as well now. This is an unbelievable... He said he didn't want to ride a waiting game in the Tour de France this year. He said he wanted to go out and attack the Tour de France, and this is what he's putting things to right.
Now a great job done by Richie Porte on this occasion. Now Froome is free and away. He's off in search of the rider from Colombia, Quintana, who is still up the road. Contador has cracked. The whole team has blown away.
Phil, there are still 7 kilometres to go to the summit of this climb. Alberto Contador now, I think, will be very happy to have Mikel Nieve alongside him to pace him a fraction. Chris Froome has never raced on the Mont Ventoux before. He doesn't know how to handle this climb, but he's almost got right across the gap to the Colombian. I'm amazed at this.
But he has trained on it a number of times. He knows what he's going at. He's now bringing himself right up alongside Quintana. This is what happened a week ago in the Pyrenees. Froome came up and blew them all away and won the stage and took yellow. A week later, he's at it again.
Well, he has said he was itching to get back into the mountains, and this is why, Phil, because he knows he's used his team. His team rode well today until Richie Porte did the last turn. The challenge came, as we expected, from Nairo Quintana, but Chris Froome is almost back onto the wheel of the Colombian climber.
Now, what is going to happen when Froome comes up here? Quintana knows he's coming. Is Froome going to wait a few deep breaths, or is he going to go straight by and see what happens? This is how it happened.
Yeah, this is how it happened. Richie Porte had done his turn for the day, and he knew that Chris Froome was going to take over the pacemaking. These two have worked like this. Froome has gone
straight through, and he builds up the revs again. Quintana this time is kicking after him, though. Well, can he get onto this back wheel?
Look at the way his legs are going over so rapidly. This is a guy who was also born at altitude. Let's not forget, he was born in Nairobi at 6,000 feet in altitude. He's not scared of these dizzy heights either.
He has this amazing pedaling cadence, the way he accelerates. It looks as though his saddle is too low.
Yeah, it does look like that. That's because he's such a tall figure. Quintana has recovered a fraction, and he's getting himself back to the wheel of Froome.
Well, all of a sudden, all change at 16.3 kilometres from the summit of Mont Ventoux. And look at this. This man from Bogota, from Colombia rather, this time is fighting his way back. They're picking up for the moment a tailwind, but it changes direction a little bit. A British-Columbia tandem on Mont Ventoux. There's still a long way to go on this climb.
I think we're still looking, Phil, at about 20 minutes before we get to the top of this climb. Contador and then Nieve and second and third and fourth place. This crowd is amazing.
Nieve seems to have found his legs again there. This is Kreuziger's group with Phil Sang as well. Also with Bout Mollema, who was second overall, but will he be second tonight?
Well, Quintana's not scared at all of the reputation of Chris Froome, and he's quite happy now to come forward and do some of the pacemaking. But these two are doing some serious damage with 5.8 kilometres to go to the top. This is a slightly easier gradient the riders are picking up here, Phil, around about 3 or 4%.
5.5 at the moment as they on this little slope here. And this will be a chance to recover, but Froome is quite happy to set the tempo here. He's got no concern for Quintana at the moment. Meters to go for Chris Froome. He's come from the pack up to Quintana. He's now doing all of the pacemaking. With every pedal rev, he is gaining time.
Well, they certainly need to get all those motorbikes out of the way, but what's interesting is Nairo Quintana here, Phil, is not showing any emotion at all. He was dropped at one stage by Chris Froome, but then Chris Froome could not continue with that effort as we start to see Froome getting out of the saddle. Quintana now is probably going to try and wait and stay in the wheel of Froome, but Froome's putting in another powerful acceleration
here. This is a huge kick again. This is another test on the youngster now from Colombia, but he looks to me as though he's recovered a little bit. As Chris Froome is driving on, he'd love to open some more time on Quintana, but primarily he wants to open the time on the riders immediately behind.
Well, the thing that's going against his attacks here, Phil, is the fact that we've got this very, very blustery, windy condition. They're picking up that headwind, and the headwind is actually slowing down the ascent for Chris Froome, which is why he can't get full speed. And the Colombian is actually taking advantage of riding uphill in the slipstream, which normally, with the tailwind, is not effective.
And he's so light, the Colombian, the wind would really hurt him. Chris Froome continues. That was a big push by Chris there. He's taking a few deep breaths now. This man is almost looking as though he's suffering on Mont Ventoux, but I say almost. He gives nothing away. I just have a feeling that Quintana has the legs to leave Froome before the summit. Now he's having words. Goodness knows what language they're talking.
Well, I think he's asking him to do a little bit of the pacemaking here, because both riders will be, once Quintana will be moving up in the overall standings, and as far as Chris Froome is concerned, he's opening up time on everybody else who is a threat to him.
Well, Froome is now having to suffer just a little bit after that effort. He was surprised he didn't unhitch Quintana. Now he's going to have to struggle on the back wheel of the youngster for a little while longer, but together they going relentlessly to the summit of Mont Ventoux in the finest position. The yellow jersey of the Tour de France gaining time on the eve of the second rest day. There's the top. It's still a long, long exposed way to the summit.
Well, everybody talked about the weakness of Team Sky. Well, when a push comes to shove, it looks like Saxo Tinkoff blew apart as well there, leaving Alberto Contador completely isolated too.
Yep, the Movistar team got their man away with all their fast pace-making to the valley below. There's Michael Rogers going through, licking his lips. Still a very select group, but Michael Rogers riding very well.
Now, Mick Rogers, a strong man. He will know all of the weaknesses of Chris Froome. He rode alongside him last year in the Tour de France, and that might be an advantage to Alberto Contador later on in the Tour.
Wout Mollema, 164, producing even so a great ride here on Mont Ventoux. He'll remain very much in contention in the overall standings. But this is Froome versus Quintana. They're separated overall by just 5 minutes after 15 days of the Tour de France. Quintana loves to climb mountains, but Froome has proved today he can control this youngster.
Well, Froome is 35 seconds now ahead of Contador and Nieve. Well, 4 kilometers to go. It's 42 seconds between these two groups.
And still look at the puffing and blowing of Chris Froome, but he knows with every pedal rev he's gaining a second here, a second there. It's almost 45 seconds back to the group containing Contador now.
Well, Movistar did the job out on the plains. That they rode on the front for a good 60 kilometers to make sure that early morning breakaway didn't get a large advantage, so that we could have a big showdown on the slopes of the Mont Ventoux. And right now it's smiling on them, because their man Nairo Quintana, the man they had banked on to get into the breakaway, is leading this race with Chris Froome. But has he got the acceleration to beat Chris Froome at the end of this stage? Or does Chris Froome want to win atop Mount Ventoux with the yellow jersey on his shoulders?
I think that's exactly what he wants. Froome is champion here. It was on these very slopes of this mountain, a kilometre from the summit, where the British rider Tom Simpson died on the 13th of July 1967 on stage 13 of the race. And he was trying to put in a bid to become the first rider from Britain to win the Tour de France. He didn't make it. It cost him his life. Well, now Chris Froome brings yellow towards the summit at 2 kilometres to go.
Out of the saddle, it's getting very, very tough now. You can see they've still got that long and winding road to take themselves up to the observatory on the top, as the Union flag continues to fly high.
Well, they're both extremely tired now, but again, Valverde slipping the back here of the group. He's catching the crosswinds now. It's no longer pleasant at all on this exposed slope of Mont Ventoux. Look how that Richie Porte has been caught, picked up and dropped.
Michael Rogers now getting dropped with Jean-Christophe Pirot, number 81, and that's all because of the pacemaking that's being done a little bit further up by Jakob Fuglsang, and whenever it slows down at Laurens ten Dam.
One rider who's in here, Paul, who's riding extremely well, is the Belgian rider Bart de Klerk. He's still in this group.
Yeah, he struggled a little bit and then managed to get his second wind and managed to ride back up to make contact with that group of leaders.
Look at the flags of the countries, the Czech Republic as well there now. This will be an uphill sprint of about 10%. Quite frankly, it's who's got any strength left. And for those of you who are asking what happened to the Devil this year, you just saw it.
All dressed in yellow this season because he wants to celebrate the 100th edition of the event as well.
Another attack, another ever lifting the pace again, Chris Froome, but I'll tell you what, Quintana's got the measure this time. Chris Froome is fighting every second of the mountain on Ventoux. The acceleration by Quintana, he just never gives you any facial expression.
Don't forget, Phil. He's finally cracked. A young 23 years of age, Quintana has popped off the wheel of Chris Froome.
Froome is taking yellow to the summit of Mont Ventoux with just 1.3 kilometres to go. Now he's gaining time. He looks over his shoulder. He has seen Quintana crack, and now Chris Froome is overall building his lead in the Tour de France over everyone.
Well, Chris Froome struggled for a couple of seasons. You know, he picked up Bill Hart here a couple of years ago when he was on holiday up in Kenya, and it took them a long time to find it. Once they did found it, then Chris Froome started to be able to produce much more consistent performances. Finally, he's done what he was trying to do. He's cracked the 23-year-old Colombian climber, but it was certainly not easy.
Well, this is where every leader of the Tour de France wants to win. On Mont Ventoux, the fabled mountain of Provence. You see it for 100 kilometres, whichever way you approach it. And now he sees 1 kilometre to the summit. Chris Froome has been under pressure. He's shed them all. He caught the young pretender. He's blown him away. And there he now comes under 1 kilometre to go. He's far enough ahead to take a fine second place.
Yes, but, you know, Quintana will learn. This is his first participation at the Tour de France. He's 23 years of age. Froome is at the prime age to be a top professional cyclist. He's 28 years old, and over the last couple of seasons, he's learned an awful lot about himself. And Richie Porte, too, will be the man he'll be the first to thank for setting this up.
For 7 days, Richie Froome has led the Tour de France. An 8th yellow jersey awaits him and an increased overall lead. Yes, he conceded 69 seconds a couple of days ago when the crosswind split the field and he was left in the chase group. Contador made ground on unfamiliar territory. But on familiar territory, Contador has lost ground.
Well, just briefly there, I noticed Bauke Mollema was getting a lot of help from his teammate Laurens ten Dam. There's 15 seconds separating this man in the yellow jersey, Chris Froome, born in Nairobi, educated in Johannesburg, South Africa, now representing Great Britain.
You know, it's amazing, really. You see the wind is slightly turning. He will actually, once he's topped the climb, which is just ahead of him, he turns to the right, and for a matter of 200 metres, he'll get a tailwind to cross the line, which is at the steepest 10% gradient. Chris Froome tops out, and he gets himself 50 points here, which means he will lead the King of the Mountains tonight, as well as the Tour de France.
His gap now, Phil, back to Alberto Contador is 1 minute and 15 seconds, but Alberto Contador himself will be moving up into second place overall tonight, ahead of Bauke Mollema.
The British flag on the right of the road. Now the chase group as Rodriguez tries to move away on the left of our picture. 1 kilometre to go for them. No reaction. He's a specialist in the last-minute attack on a steep climb.
Well, an attempt of a reaction there coming from Roman Kreuziger. But yes, this man from Spain, Rodriguez, he has got a very good acceleration in these climbs.
Boy, it's painful, but he knows with the pain comes the victory today on Mont Ventoux, and with the victory on Mont Ventoux, a week tomorrow should come victory in the Tour de France, the second year in a row for Britain. Might be a little bit early, but today everything has gone so well. He's increased his overall lead tonight. Chris Froome will shortly flick to our left. Here it comes as he turns for the finishing line. Drop back down to the road at the moment. This is Perrault, best Frenchman still. Through the pain, but it's all to the good. Here he goes. Now he'll see the finish, and it's up a hill. Where else would it be? As he comes round the corner, picks up the tailwind, climbs and crawls and grabs his way towards the line. Chris Froome has toppled all of the men of the Tour de France today. His team set it up for him. He had the ability to finish it. Froome gets his 3rd historical stage win in the Tour and increases his overall lead tonight.
Well, the man we're looking at here is the man we'll be talking about in years to come when we go into the big mountain passes, because at 23 years of age, this is a phenomenal performance by Nairo Quintana. He's lost a little bit of time on Chris Froome, but he's gained time on almost everybody else, and he'll be also moving up well in the overall standings tonight. And look at the average speed of this stage, although there's only one mountain down towards the end, 41 kilometers an hour, 29 seconds lost by Quintana. The question is, how much has everybody else lost?
Yes, only one man could beat that rider from Colombia. Now, this is the group, and look at this. Nieve's been caught by Rodriguez here, as Rodriguez does his traditional flash up the last few meters of a steep climb, grits his teeth. He's best of the rest, really, here, and is improving his overall position.
Where is Contador? Contador was in the front just a few moments ago with Mikel Nieve. He must have really cracked in the final kilometers as Rodriguez and Nieve line up for this final corner.
Well, Nieve's got him on the line here, or is Rodriguez going to find it? You're right, Paul, it's completely, it's just a bit from sight. It must be just before the finish of the actual climb, but Nieve, who has really attacked very low down on this mountain and has hung on to finish in third place today. Or is Rodriguez going to try? No, it's going to be Nieve Rodriguez.
Alberto Contador, Phil, is coming up here and he's being caught by his own teammate. There is Roman Kreuziger. Contador really went to pieces in those last kilometers.
He's gone back to his teammate. They're split by 3 seconds. They're sprinting side by side. They'll both get the same time, so they're still split by 3 seconds as Kreuziger beats Contador to the line and Fuglsang comes in behind him.
It looked like Bouk Mollema coming over. No, it's Laurens ten Dam is the next rider to come in.
That's an incredible ride by Laurens ten Dam. He's the real find. We've never seen him ride like this.
Now he's hoping to defend his 5th place in the overall standings. So that's Perrault coming up now. He'll be certainly by far and away the best Frenchman in this race.
And Bart de Klerk behind, another new find in this year's Tour de France. A high finish for him on top of Mont Ventoux as well. Dan Martin has struggled through. Remember, he won day 2 in the Pyrenees. This is going to be a very rewarding climb by Dan Martin. Michael Rogers up front first of all. Valverde just behind. Then comes Dan Martin. It's always time that counts, not position. And Martin will accelerate a little bit up the overall tonight.
Yes, well, they certainly have rocked it upside down. There's Richie Porte. That was the man who set up the victory for Team Sky and proved that after one bad day in the Pyrenees, his Tour de France was not over, because he's still got a V8 under that bonnet.
Well done, Richie Porte. He really set Chris Froome up today. What a tremendous situation that was. When you look across the barren slopes there of Mont Ventoux, as we're seeing here, the riders continue now to come up the mountain. Just over 3 minutes as Robert Hessink arrives. There's been lost. Kwiatkowski comes up. Still a good ride for this guy, but I'm afraid it won't be enough. Over 3 minutes lost to Quintana. He loses his white jersey. The face of Chris Froome. As he punches the sky. He won in the Pyrenees. He's won on the first day as we enter into the Alps. Let's have a look then at the stage result first of all. It's they've all come over probably with split times today. Froome wins by 29 seconds over Quintana, a minute 23 on Nieve, who doesn't matter anyway in the real picture. Neither does Rodriguez. Kreuziger did though. He's lost a minute 40, 5th place, and that'll be the same as Contador's lost a minute 40. Took a minute 9 back in the wind, and he's lost a minute 40 on his favourite playground of the mountains as they continue now to cross over the finishing line here. What a brute of a climb that is. Many people say, which is the harder of the two, Alpe d'Huez or Mont Ventoux? And everybody says it's Mont Ventoux, except there's 2 climbs of Alpe d'Huez in a couple of days' time. This is how the incredible pedalling acceleration of a very ungainly cyclist in Chris Froome managed to shake everybody. And then once he's away, here's the Michelob Ultra overall standings. Chris Froome now is 4 minutes 14 ahead of Bouk Mollema, who protected his 2nd place. Contador held his 3rd place at 4:25. Kreuziger, those 3 seconds remain, 4th. Laurens ten Dam in 5th. No change in the end of the top 5. Quintana's moved up to 6th, though. Fulsang is in 7th. Rodriguez 8th, and the top Frenchman remains Jean-Christophe Perrault, although he slipped a place. Andrew Talansky had a great ride today after his tiring ride yesterday. 13th for him in his first tour, just 12:32, almost back to what he was at the start of yesterday's stage. Valverde up to 15th. Sylvain Chavanel, our man that started the move, he was in the breakaway all day. He's coming home. Gets the salute of the French public here, wears the stripes of the tricolour jersey of ex-road race champion of France, but currently time trial champion. Great day out, very aggressive ride by him, and he's made the summit. French will appreciate the effort he put in today on Bastille Day to fly the flag to the top. Got mixed up in the battle, though, that perhaps he wasn't really expecting. Looks as though he's ridden sensibly up this last few kilometres since he was caught. Save the effort. Rest day tomorrow for everybody, of course. We'll bring you our usual prime-time show tomorrow night, as well as tonight. Don't forget to tune in. It's been a dramatic day in the Tour de France.